Hello, this is Brian Lawrence, and we are reconvening open session here at 6:10. So we're running a few minutes past, but we'll go ahead and we are going to start with we'll start with roll call and then we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'll start with roll call. So Ms. Durkee?
Here.
Ms. Mayo?
Here.
Ms. Cound?
Here.
Ms. Mason?
Here.
And I'm also here, so that makes 5 of us, all board members. So if everyone will go ahead and join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you very much for that. Let me go ahead and report out from closed session on item 7.1, negotiations. So the board has, publicly expressed their eagerness to return to negotiations, and so we received information from staff and gave them direction to hopefully help speed negotiations along. Item 7.2, the board received information. Item 7.3, public employee appointment for the superintendent. By a 5-0 vote, the board approved the separation agreement between Dr. Martinez and the Mount Diablo School Board. So by law, the school district can choose to make that public upon request. Instead, what we'll be doing is we will attach this item. It needs to be fully executed in terms of signatures. And so we'll go ahead and it will be posted shortly, attached to this agenda item for anyone who wants to go back and see it. So we will be doing that shortly with it. And then, so we move, and on item 7.4, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Woods versus MDUSD workers' comp. The board had a 5-0 vote to enter, to approve to authorize an agreement in that matter. So with that, we move along to 8.1, which is our student rep report. So hello, students. We're excited to have you here with us. And so we have some new faces, and just obviously school has now completed and there's a whole lot going on in the world. And so we wanted our students to invite them to change it up a little bit. So this is not, here's what's happening at my particular school and all the events, but instead we wanted to give our students an opportunity to share what they're seeing at their school, how they're feeling about things, what questions they have, how that might relate to the school district, how our school district can better support them. We certainly have some items on later tonight regarding our board equity policy, as well as a resolution that we're going to be addressing some of what's happening in the world. But we as a board wanted to hear from our students and give them a chance to weigh in. So instead of, and like I said, instead of just a strict report, we're hoping to hear a conversation and have them go back and forth. And I promise your board will do some listening, but if you have questions for us, we're happy to answer that. And we might ask you some clarifying questions, but really this is the time for our students. So perhaps we could start with introductions, and I could maybe ask Bianca if you could go first, and then we could just go around and have each student introduce themselves and then start a conversation. So Bianca, you up for that?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
So, hi, my name is Bianca Solomon, and I'm a 2020 graduate from Ignacio Valley High School.
Yida, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Yeda Elias Sandoval. I am an upcoming senior at Ignacio Valley High School.
Okay, thank you. And apologies for pronunciation. So, Jade.
Hi, you said it right. Hi, I'm Jade, and I'm a graduating senior from Mount Diablo High School.
All right, thank you, Jade. And then Sky, how about over to you?
Hi, my name is Sky Johnson. I will be a junior next year, so I'm the youngest.
All right, all ends of the spectrum. And I'm sorry, Sky, which school are you at? I didn't hear.
I'm representing Concord High School.
Representing Concord. Okay, great. Thank you. And then how about Isabella?
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm from College Park High School, and I will be a senior next year.
All right, thank you, Izzy. And then we have Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Lapise, and I'm a graduate, this year's graduate from College Park High School.
All right. Thank you. And I believe I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Is that everybody? Okay. So I would just start you off with the question, and please then take it from there. Just, you know, with events that have been happening the past couple weeks, thoughts on that, what you're seeing, what you're hearing from your friends, and then just please go ahead and open forum for our students. Would anyone like to start?
Can I start?
Please.
All right. Hello, everybody. As I mentioned, my name is Yeda. So this is more of a question, and I'm kind of aiming it towards more the representatives of College Park. So as we all know, what's been happening and what was happening in College Park with one of the students, I kind of really want to know what's been happening with the student themselves and if there's been like anything that's been mentioned.
Yeah, so I do know what you're talking about. This particular student had been posting racist and homophobic posts on social media. And they did email the administrators at our high school. The board was contacted, and they are handling the situation. Board members, if you'd like to weigh in about what you guys have done specifically about this student. But there is action that is being taken against the discrimination that occurred.
So I can speak at a very high level. Obviously, we can't comment on individual students, but what I can tell you is anytime something of what the nature of what was just described, it's something that we as a school district take very seriously. It was immediately escalated. Staff has taken action to make sure that that type of thing is not tolerated within our school district.
All right. Just one more thing I want to add on that is I have friends that attend College Park, and I was told by a friend that that's not the first time something like that has happened within that school area itself. Particularly from the student. And so I understand it probably didn't come to admin like as soon as possible, but I just wanted to mention that that is nothing new that happened at College Park. I don't really want to throw the school themselves under the bus or any admin or anything, but I do want to have it mentioned out there, especially since we're doing this, that something like that is not the first time that it's happened.
Right, and that is completely true. And I think really the reason why this time our urgency was heard is because so many students came out and they contacted the necessary people to tell them what was going on. And when you have so many students band together against discrimination, that's when you really are able to make change. And I think that was just the main difference, was just a number of students, we all just unified together. But it is a problem, and we definitely need to work on better communication between admin and students about discrimination happening, because this should not be a recurring issue, and it is.
And I feel like a difference that could help is if it's involved also in counselors, training in counselors, you know? It's not just like this happened and then automatic like suspension or whatever, but it's like more like, you know, having like some kind of like, I guess, course or like a program that students could go into and learn about it, like kind of learn from what they did and what it causes. So I think that counselors, and you know, not just only counselors, but other people who work on the school or in the districts just have that training.
I agree with Anna, was it? I really like the idea that instead of just solely punishing our students for that type of thing, that they should learn something out of it. Because if we're just saying that you get a suspension, then what's really stopping them from doing it again? And it could be a learning experience for both the student and anyone involved, as well as for the the teachers that help mentor that student.
Yeah, because suspension, not only does it affect their, you know, their school and their learning, but some students take it as a vacation. They're not learning. They're just taking advantage of it at home. So I think having a program could definitely help.
I agree. I have experienced like being called a racial slur and then trying to go to people that would help and it not being taken as serious as it is at how it is now, because it's such of being like everyone is so aware of what's happening now. So of course, like if you see that now, then more people are going to take action on it. But with my experience, like I definitely agree that just punishing them is almost like hushing it away, in a, sort of, because you're not educating them, you're not teaching them on what they did wrong. You're just saying, no, don't do that. Here, we're just gonna take you out of school for a little bit, and you can come back. It's not really telling them what they did and like how they can prevent it. So I really agree with Anna and Bianca.
And I want to go in on that. I agree with that too, because me being African American, I was taught that racism is not something that you're born with, it's something that you're taught. So clearly, I agree that she should have, instead of just being suspended or expelled, because that's right, that's just kind of passing it over. That's like somebody does a crime, taking them to jail or something. It's the same thing. You just kind of passing over it. So I do agree that they should have some type of resource so somebody can talk to her about that and help her like learn like that it is not okay. And she obviously, maybe her household or whatever, I don't know, I don't really know her, I'm not gonna speak on it, but you know, like I said, it's something that's taught. Racism is something that's taught. It's not something you're born with. So, you know, you guys should look forward to trying to open more resources so students can talk about that, because, you know, some students may not feel that way, but that's how they were raised and you can't hold that against them. And another thing is, I feel that students, not only admin, but students also should start paying more attention to things like that so it doesn't happen so often, because it's happening too often. And right now in this time with all this protesting and violence going on, that is very dangerous and that's not okay, because I saw people personally posting her address and stuff, and that's turns into a safety issue. So I feel like students and admins should try to work on it more to keep eyes out and keep ears open about situations so it doesn't escalate that far, because then that turns into that student or that person who made that mistake you're putting themselves in danger, and like when it gets out, you know, you can't really stop a whole bunch of students or things. So I feel like it needs to be more attention paid closer to that.
And I definitely agree with that. While I don't condone any of the actions that the student did, at the same time, the way it was handled, blasting out her phone number and her address, it endangered her safety. And she was really gentrified. And I really, even if she's been taught a way of thinking that is totally absurd and she needs to be educated on that, she didn't deserve to be completely gentrified like that.
Izzy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could I maybe ask a redirected question, just because I want to make sure we don't focus on just one particular student? I guess, you know, one of the things that I'm consistently hearing, and I would love to hear from all our students, is, you know, we have these acts of overt racism that are so apparent, but one of the things that I'm hearing from people is what the terms like the microaggressions and the little things that add up over time that are used to, perhaps not even knowingly, but leave some of our students feeling singled out or treated differently and are harmful. And so I would like to open that up as perhaps a more general topic instead of us focusing on one specific student. And Izzy, I didn't mean to interrupt just particularly you, and so I would open up to any of our students, but maybe you could share your thoughts, students, on what you've seen in that type of area and how that might be something, because I think the idea that all of you are articulated of, we need to not just address one particular student and one particular incident, but how do we learn from this? How do we not just how do we collectively understand better and things like that? So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Right. So I think one thing that might really help is if we establish some sort of like hotline or some sort of resource to reach out to whenever you experience these racist microaggressions, so that the board and the school district at large and all the admin are just aware of what's happening more. Because if you are able to state what happened, even anonymously, as long as you know what's happening and how much that is happening, it allows people to know that this is really a prevalent issue and it's not just like a one-time thing. It happens all the time.
Okay, interesting. Other thoughts, students?
Oh, sorry, you go ahead, Sky. It's
Okay,
fine.
thank you. I would just say that support is also a very important thing, because this year I was our vice president for Black Student Union, and I found trouble having to keep the students in my club have the motivation to keep going and not take it as serious, because we have like this reputation that every year our club falls. Every year our club isn't taken seriously. And we had, for Black History Month, we had to make these posters to raise awareness and all this. And so our district, or like our school, didn't have like our support in that. We had to do that to raise awareness. Like if it wasn't for our club, that would have never happened. So just having these things just always around raises awareness for everyone. And so the micro like racism and all that would be more apparent to everyone, because it's more of like, it's everywhere. Like you see, hey, this is what happens. So I feel like a hotline is a great resource, and I agree on that. We should have a hotline, we should have these resources, but also support and being more vocal about these things instead of like more of like anonymous, because I do think it's important.
And it should be more like open, like, and you know how like for like incoming freshmen, the assemblies are based on your academics or your sports. It should also be, there should be an assembly as well, or it can be included as well. It can be in its own or together, but it should be, they should be talking about maybe how, like, you know, if they offer these programs or resources, it should also be mentioned about. And like, it might not be on topic, but also focus on other things such as mental health or any of that, you know. Assemblies could definitely also like promote that, so that students aren't, you know, like, where can I find this? It may be up on a poster board in the office, but not everyone goes to the office. So it's something that should be talked about.
And I agree with that, because I also feel to make a change, you have to acknowledge the problem. And I feel like that's something that a lot of schools aren't doing. I have never went to any school in all my 4 years of being at Mount Diablo High School and learned anything about Black people, African Americans going through slavery and stuff, any colored person, not just African Americans. I feel that to solve a problem, you have to acknowledge it and it has to be talked about. And I feel like that, I'm not going to speak for all schools, but most schools do not teach that and make that aware. And that could be another reason why, you know, children and students do that, like, or some students or people are racist or make slurs or make inappropriate comments. And some people simply just don't know. Some people are not doing it to be hurtful or to be mean. Like, they really don't know and don't understand. Sometimes it really is a misunderstanding. So I feel to also make that change, I agree the hotline is really good, but I do agree that it needs to be something more to be taught about it. It needs to be taught more, something, or spoken about more to so people could understand the problem, because you can't just expect students to go with the flow of something or jump on the bandwagon of being Black Lives Matter or whatever the case is, or non-racism, if they don't know the pain, or they don't know what it is, they don't know what people been through, they don't know why other people feel that way. So I feel like it needs to be out there a little more and talked about a little more in school, so that children are aware of that.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Oftentimes history is whitewashed. And the struggles that people of color have gone through in this country is not covered. Especially, like, a lot of people say, oh, racism ended, that's it. But no, people don't know that after racism was sharecropping, which is basically just racism again. It was basically just slavery again. And people don't know these things. And that's why maybe we should have like an assembly, like, that everyone goes to just kind of learn more about that, or just give out more resources to learn about the history of racial oppression in this country. Because people don't know that it's always been systematically against people of color, then they won't know the struggles. And we need more voices heard other than just white people who have run this country for so long.
And especially like, obviously, like if, you know, all the schools are closed, but let's say, you know, we were still in school, and then mostly for what happened recently, like knowing how to actually speak out as well, because some people take advantage of the situation and just do their, you know, their things, which sadly has been on the news lately. I think it's another way, having, you know, another program, like if you want to raise your voice, this is the right way to do it, or this is, you know, this is how you can, you know, do better. And I've learned that from, you know, Parkland, David Hogg, and what he did, how he raised his voice, and all those kids, all the students. So I think that's another way that we can also come together with.
I like how everyone's bringing up the idea that there should be some sort of course or an assembly to educate on these racist or racial tendencies. What I wanted to bring up is that actually I took a class, I had an ethnic studies class my senior year with one of my teachers, and I think it was only available one period of the day, but I was lucky enough to be in there. And I think, as was mentioned before, not a lot of kids were into kind of you know, protesting for Black lives. You know, they weren't so excited about it, but then we started learning about the history and what goes behind this type of thing, and suddenly everyone was interested. We were making artwork considering it, and not just Black lives, but really we learned a lot about microaggressions, racial things every day. That I think one of our first assignments was keeping track of how many microaggressions we saw in that day. And I think it's almost seen as normal that, and keep in mind, in some places racism might actually be a normal thing to see every day, but we have to kind of stop this almost casual racism from becoming normal. So that's why I like the idea that we bring up these assemblies, or maybe more classes that students can take in order to learn about this sort of thing.
So on that, let me ask, what would you think if we had a policy that as part of a graduation requirement that students had to take a ethnic studies class? Or do you think it would be better served in assemblies so it was earlier? Or what's your thought on something like that?
I think maybe earlier.
So
to be honest, so that's not like, you know, late already in your, like, you know, we enter adulthood.
Yep.
Something that it should be taught as a younger person than being 18 already.
Right, and also in terms of like a required class, I'd say it's probably better to have an assembly. From my point of view, I'm an AP student, I'm an honors student, I'm a music student, and because we get so like little classes to really choose what we want to take, some people will see ethnic studies as an annoyance that prevents them from taking another class. So I think rather than just having a required class, maybe having an assembly, just having resources for students to learn. There's always, you know, DVC as well. Maybe that would be a better route.
I honestly think that I agree with them. I feel like making it a required class is kind of forcing it on, a little bit forceful, and not every student would want to do that. So I agree that there should probably be an assembly about it, but I still think that there should be a class for that, so that if you want to do that and you want to learn that, you have that option to decide that.
I agree. Just having more of the resources and more options would be great, but not so like forcing it, like this is what you have to do, this is required, you won't graduate. But I do think that's a great route to go.
And I agree as well. It shouldn't be more of a required class, because obviously there are reasons why someone wouldn't be able to take the required class. I'd much rather have like an assembly, and most definitely just having awareness, especially throughout schools.
So speaking more on like assemblies, perhaps we could have speakers, African-American speakers, Latinx speakers, just from different cultures to really share about the struggles of their people. Native American speakers, just speakers who understand what different groups of color go through, so that the students can better understand as a community what their fellow peers are going through as well.
Agree.
This is so great to hear from all of you and your thoughts. Just thank you so much for coming here today and sharing your ideas. I've written down so many of your ideas and thoughts, and really hope that in the coming year, for those of you who will still be in our schools, that we can continue to work together to have students be a part of the solution. Your ideas and your participation is really incredible. I've heard the ideas around assemblies, around really improving the curriculum, whether it's ethnic studies course or infusing the history of racial oppression into our existing history classes. The hotline idea, so this is just fantastic. So Sky, I did want to ask you about the BSU club at your school. Do you feel like you have a network of BSUs from all the schools where you guys can connect and support each other? Or do you feel like you're kind of isolated as a single club?
Well, since I wasn't president, then I didn't have all the resources of everything, but just like my first experience of just like being a part of the board of the club, I just felt it was harder to try and have this, like, because we were like the smallest group, and knowing how our small Black community at my school doesn't feel represented, doesn't feel supported. So it's like, why would I want to join a club when I'm already like don't feel important at the school? So like I'm president next year, so I'm gonna try my best to just try and build this foundation of just like we can do this. So I'm trying. I really don't have an answer, but me personally, I did feel a little bit like we were just there, like we didn't really.
So I have a question, may I comment? Yeah, thank you. I also want to build on Ms. Cown's comments and thank you all for being here. It's very enlightening, and you know, hearing directly from your experience. It's really, I mean, people of all ages are, as you know, grappling with this. And you know, the one thing that I think is positive out of all the horrific stuff that has happened recently is, you know, how much information is coming out. To your point about history, you know, I feel like a fairly enlightened person, but you know, every day at least 2 or 3 things I didn't know, you know, and I think history is powerful, you know, to your point about people understanding the history and how racism is part of our fabric in this country for, you know, very obvious reasons, Bo. But I have 2 things. One is, you know, I had the opportunity to work in Mount Diablo Unified a number of years ago, and I had an opportunity to bring students from all the high schools together around it wasn't around this issue, but I saw the power of that. I saw it in a couple of different ways, and I just wanted, you don't have to give me an idea tonight, but if you would think about what that might look like. I'm old. So, you know, I was in high school in the 60s, and I had a particular experience that I've never forgotten. It wasn't all good, you know, I mean, it was, but I've never forgotten it as a young person. And so it had to do with, you know, people coming together from different high schools. So I thought about if one of the values of being a relatively large school district is that we have that opportunity for people. And so if you could think about what that might look like, you know, you're being very practical, which I really appreciate, you know, in terms of, you know, what will people show up for, you know, you guys have schedules that are challenging as it is, what would really work, and what that might look like. I get assemblies as kind of, I don't want to say normal, but, you know, it's something that's pretty common, but is there something bigger across the school district? You know, leadership comes together, right? At Concord High hosts, right? The leadership teams. I think that's a great model as well. So if you have something to share now, that'd be great. But if you want to email me later with some ideas, I would appreciate it. And as a second question, I don't know, this might be going out on a limb too much, but You know, part of what's talked about across the country right now, and we've gotten some email feedback around it, is the having SROs in our high schools. And I know I've wanted to ask you if you have thoughts or opinions about that. School resource officers, police officers that spend time on classrooms. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I have some sense that there's some value added to that, that it can be a positive thing, but I really want to hear from your perspective.
Well, in terms of uniting students from across the district, my freshman year after the Parkland shooting, we had a school-sponsored protest, which basically students who wanted to could leave a period and just go out on the field peacefully, would make their voices heard, and then just head back to class. And I think if we do that at like all the schools or all the high schools, just at the same time together, that is something that is peaceful but powerful, and that is a good way to unite students.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody want to weigh in with their thoughts regarding the SROs? If not, we can move along, or any other topics.
I mean, having an SRO, I mean, I felt comfortable having one. I mean, I knew him also, so I mean, it's protective. It's not something that, you know, it's right, I guess, in a way, like having that mindset that we should have one. But at the same time, you know, not officers are the same. They're different.
Right.
And so, I mean, I have 2 family members who are, you know, officers, and I mean, they're all different.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about background checks, I guess, or, you know, the evaluation.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I think it's helpful to have school police officers and people there to ensure the safety of our students. But I think it's also really helpful to get to know the person who's protecting you, or else you could have in the back of your mind maybe a bad thought, or you might get the wrong idea. And I remember something that maybe happened a little late, but in my senior year, I did get the chance to kind of meet with the school officer. My economics teacher had the school officer come in, and we got to ask her a couple of questions about the 10 Amendment, and got to know her a little better than just strictly being the police officer at our school. And that would make students feel more comfortable around them, I think.
Yeah, and something that we did was we had the spring fling, and we had College Park versus Pleasant Hill Police Department. So, I mean, if you have things like that, or just getting to know the officer, it's, you know, it's something to take in.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Mayo, any comments or questions?
So I really appreciate the comments from you experienced students. The one thing I do want to share, and I'm disappointed that you're not aware of it, is that the school district does have a hotline already available for students. And the way you can locate it is that you go to the website and type in "contact us," and the first thing that comes up is the school district hotline, where parents and students or anyone in the district can leave an anonymous message, or they can also provide their information. And the phone number is 925-709-4847. That number has been published for more than 20 years. It's on various documents in our school district. And the one thing that I had hoped, but because I don't have a current student body card, is that it might be on the back of your student body card. I do know that certain emergency numbers are supposed to be included on your student body card because of state law around suicide hotlines, other resources for you. But at one point in time, the district was able to print that information on the back of student body cards. So perhaps this is something we could work towards together to see if the company that produces the student body cards could add that number to our cards, because as this incident was shown, the success in, what do I want to say, of approaching the current situation that occurred between the two schools, and the friction that it caused was because people spoke up quickly. Perhaps they might have spoken up earlier if they had known about the hotline as well. So the hotline is there for you, and I do know that staff check it daily, and they are responsive.
To go off
Please.
on what you said, I feel that the schools should enforce it around the school more, because some students are not really aware of that, and I feel like they're not making us, like, telling us enough, because I'm pretty sure if you ask a lot of students, they would not know that that was there. So I feel like the admin and teachers in the schools themselves need to students know that, like, post it around the school and do more so students know that, so because it's not really something that a lot of students are aware of.
Right, and add off of that, I know in a lot of the classrooms they have those pink papers that talk about the law about anti-discrimination, but there's really no like contact info on it. So if you have that hotline, that could help. And in terms of printing it on the back of student ID cards, I know at my school, College Park, we don't have physical ID cards. We only have online ones that don't have a back with contact info. It's if you want a physical one, you have to ask for one. But just having that phone number, spreading it, like putting it in the office, putting it in different classrooms, maybe in the hallways, so people know that it's there, so that they can report something as soon as they see it.
Great.
Are there also places where a lot of students are online? Like, should this be something that's sent out over a particular type of social media or something like that?
I definitely think Instagram.
Snapchat, Instagram, yeah.
Or the school social media page itself, like their own.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Ms. Mason, any comments or questions?
I guess I would just say I went to high school in Mount Diablo School District in the 70s. And when I was at high school, we actually had race riots at our school. And that's where I guess the seed for social justice was planted in me. Being an Italian American, we were considered minorities at the time. And the school had to do a lot of work pulling ourselves back together. But I think the important thing is it taught me the lesson to always look out for the other person. And I have always put myself in a position where I could advocate for social justice for all people. And I actually, as today, I sit on the Contra Costa County Racial Oversight Committee that, as a representative of Mount Diablo School District, because racism will never go away. It's something we're going to have to fight every single day to overcome. And you do that by talking about it, by having policies, by having follow through. And I think one of the most important voices always is your voice, because you continue to carry the torch to make sure. I never thought we'd go back to this place where we were in the 70s, but here we are. So I applaud you for speaking up, and I tell you to keep doing it, and hopefully you'll take a path where you'll be in position to continue to help other people.
Great, thank you, Ms. Mason. So students, I want to give you a chance to have the last word. Any other suggestions, things we can do better, or final thoughts?
An idea I had would be, I know how she said that the leadership clubs like go from different schools and meet up, and to make people aware of it, it should be like an option instead of just leadership, like almost like a field trip that students can go to another school and from all different schools and meet up, and then it should be kind of like talk about people like of color and stuff, and like inform people and give them that knowledge on that. But it should kind of be like a field trip so that a lot of people have the option to go and learn about it. And I feel like a lot of students would want to do that.
Great, thank you.
I mean, just keep talking about it. These issues may be difficult to talk about, but I mean, nothing's gonna do good if you just keep pushing them away or hiding them. It's something going on, and it's something, you know, it's real, and you just have to keep talking about it and be more open, because that's how you can decrease the amount of issues that's going on.
Great. Anybody else? All right, well, I don't want to take up too much of your summer. So I want to say a giant thank you to our students. I mean, I think this is, to your point, this needs to be a constant topic, so that this can't just be a one-time thing, but to have an opportunity to hear your perspectives and your great suggestions, it was really appreciated. Each of you are spectacular in your own way, and that's very apparent. We're so thankful that you took a little time with us. So students, thank you so much. We would love to hear your continued thoughts. For those of you who are graduates, we wish you the best of luck. Come back and visit. And for those of you who are going to be with us next year, we're looking forward to seeing you, hopefully in person. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your summer and great night. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
All
thank
right.
you, President Lawrence, for setting up that format. I thought that was really very, very helpful to be able to hear from the students, not just what activities are happening at their school, but really what's going on and what some of their ideas are. So thank you.
Of course, thank you. So with that, we move along to public comment. Item 9.1. The public may address the board regarding any item within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education of the Mount Diablo School District that is not on this agenda. These presentations are limited to 3 minutes each, or a total of 30 minutes for all speakers, or the 3-minute limit may be shortened. If there are multiple speakers on any one subject, the public comment may be moved to the end of the meeting. Speakers are not allowed to yield their time. So before we go to the public comment, I just want to make a couple quick notes. So one, we do provide a voicemail number where people can call in. That's 801-228-0093, or people can email boardcomments@mdusd.org. I want to kind of share what we did when we were in person and people would make public comment, that because of the Brown Act, the board's really not able to engage in a dialogue around these issues. We're able to receive information. We're able to perhaps ask staff to clarify something or to follow up on something. But whether it's email or a voicemail, we're not really able to engage in that dialogue with you. You also have the opportunity, you can, all of the board members' email addresses are listed on the website. You can email them individually. You can email all 5. When someone emails about a topic that is really specific to staff or a personnel item or something like that, what will often happen is that I, as the board president, might email and say, thank you on behalf of the board. We've received the information and passed it along to staff. And that's not to say that other board members haven't received it as well and read it, but simply instead of having 5 board members all email members of staff trying to follow up on it, trying to provide kind of a central point of contact. So just a little clarification there. And with the voicemails, it's sometimes a bit difficult to tell which item they're specifically speaking to. I know that we do have one voicemail for item 18.3, so we will play that voicemail when we get to item 18.3. But for the rest of them, I believe the 8 or 9 or so that we have, we were going to do under general public comment. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff and give them an opportunity to go ahead and play for us the public comment voicemails that we've received to date.
Good evening, Mount Diablo Union School District Board members. My name is Alex Hernandez. I'm a parent of 7th grade student at Oakwood Middle School, as well as an Ignacio Valley incoming freshman of the year of 2020 to 2021 school year. I'm also an active PTA member of the Meadow Hills Elementary School Board. At the last board meeting, the 30-day notice was given to our superintendent to vacate his position, and I believe it must have been a hard decision to make, but I congratulate you for your leadership in performing your fiduciary duty to do what is best for our school district and the students and families. Let's not question how or why this action was taken. We humbly suggest that on your next occasion, you take the necessary time to select the most suitable candidate for the position of the Mount Diablo Union School District Superintendent. Someone who can well represent the diverse population that we serve in our district. We are living in uncertain times, and yet we do not know exactly how we are going to proceed with the reopening of schools. Therefore, I kindly ask you to consider the position of interim superintendent until we find the most suitable person for this major job. You have a difficult task ahead. Maybe the current high employment rate, we may have a large number of individuals applying for this position. You could then carefully review their work, experience, professionalism, vision, and how we can all grow together to take the district to the next and better level. Applicants' background checkups are of the utmost importance. In moments of need, it is difficult being objective, but I hope that we have recently learned a constructive lesson. As I mentioned before, do not be influenced by personal connections or recommendations. Many of our new incomers, sometimes outsiders, come with their own agenda. We need a leader who can find solutions, someone who is willing to work with us, someone who we can trust. Our district is unique in many ways, and our new leadership has to connect and represent the population that we serve, as well as developing a good, safe, healthy, and supporting working environment for all the staff, thereby providing education to all our students. I hope to speak on your behalf of many as parents agreed with the recent resolution you made. I'm here to tell you that if you want our support, interpret our desires in any helpful way. Please call us and we will gladly work with you in any way on any other issues. Many thanks again and good evening.
Yes, I was wondering if the board has considered one way of reducing the budget, eliminating the transitional kindergarten program, and also eliminating full day kindergarten, but also be helpful as well financially.
Hi, my name is Andrea Alford. I'm a parent of 4 kids in Monticello Unified School District. I'm calling to urge you to please leave bilingual education alone. To write to students in California to receive a bilingual education, and it needs to no longer be brought to the board as a budget cut. Additionally, please take Crossroads High School off of the list for budget cuts. It would be absolutely shameful to cut a program that serves 2 vulnerable populations. First, our pregnant and parenting students, and then also their children, our future students. Additionally, the program increases graduation rates. Please do not cut any more school counselors. When we return to school, our kids will need them more than ever. Please hold the district accountable to give students with IEPs their services via Zoom or teletherapy so that IEPs will no longer be out of compliance. I have 3 students that have not received their speech therapy and other services, and this is a major problem. Finally, students of color, students with disabilities, and English learners are grossly underrepresented in our school leadership, and when you search for a new superintendent, please strongly consider the significance of diversity in leadership. This is incredibly important moving forward, that we have superintendent and leadership that represent people of color, people with disabilities, and English learners. Thank you for your service. Have a good day.
Hi, my name is Eric Clifton. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Delta View Elementary School, and I'm part of the bargaining team for Medea. Wow, I'm just calling in to say, you know, we spent all those hours bargaining our contract, getting the TA, over 700 days. We're going without a contract. All that time, all that negotiating, and really bargaining, doing our homework, getting it done, and countless hours of work. And then we finally get to an agreement and shake on it. And your team comes in for the photo op, take the picture, right? And then we get our ratification of it by our members, 96% plus, passed it. And you guys gave your bargaining team authorization to agree to the contract. And then what? You dropped the ball. You let us all down. You failed. Everyone up there. No one fought hard enough. You guys should be calling each other out. Pointing fingers. You up there on the board. Or is it all 5 of you? It's disgraceful. It's a shame. You guys need to do better. Leaders, you're going to listen to Rob Martinez, Lisa in Murphy Oaks, you're going to listen to them and get run around all over the place? You're going to hire conservative people all the time? We're talking about we have no money. We never have money. We can't go past a few years. Even with the $100 million in the bank a few years ago, oh, we have no money. In a few years, it's going to be zero. Get real, okay? Get real. The last best offer that you guys put up there was a disgrace. Okay, it's us. We're the ones coming. We're the ones fighting for people. And people, I mean teachers, students, librarians, counselors, nurses, the real people. The people running and
Yes, my name is Catherine McRoberts. I'm a grandparent of a student in Mount Diablo School District, and I'm deeply concerned about the budgets that this district has been left with. I know it's going to be a most difficult time for the district with everything that's going on, but I implore upon you to give good consideration to especially students with special needs who are going to need ongoing IEPs and at the very least be able to use Zoom calls and language arts. I know that this is going to be difficult, but I hope that you look deeply at the classroom cuts. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Celeste Graybill, the principal of Rhine Avenue Elementary, and I just wanted to take a minute to address the school board and let them know what an incredible job our CARES staff has done, not only for the students of Rhine Avenue during the school closure, but for the school itself. Our CARES staff has been willing to come in at a moment's notice to support the needs of the school during the school closure. They have been here to help us receive Chromebooks, library books, say hi to the children, give a smile. They helped pass out STEM kits earlier during the school closure. They've come to support our 5th grade promotion, and they continue to support during the summer. So once again, I just wanted to give them an incredible shout out and share something positive happening within our community. Thank you, Rhine Avenue CARES staff. Thank you to the Mount Diablo CARES staff. You are much appreciated. Have a nice evening.
I wrote this for the 28th board meeting. Governing board, my first thought is that the extremely short notice for CSEA employees returning from work this week. I guess the worst part is that every school site decides what to do. At some schools, they don't need to come back in. At another site, they want you to come in. At one site, has my members coming in 5 hours a day. What an SEA is doing for 5 hours when there are no students is beyond me. So the layout of this, that everybody gets to make their own decisions instead of the district saying what plan should and how we will proceed to do this. It's very confusing for employees because they do talk to each other and hear what other sites are doing, wanting to know why there is such a difference in the course of action at different sites. I have no answer except everybody gets to do what they want. There is no direction. But I guess one of the biggest things for me this month was there was not one single word. Yes, I saw the resolution on the board, classified board resolution from the district regarding classified employees of the Mount Diablo School District. I find that strange because we need teachers and we have wonderful teachers, but you can't open the doors to a school without your classified employees. Yet there was absolutely no mention whatsoever of a thank you for the work you're doing, nothing at all. We as a union sent a message to our members thanking them for their work and letting them
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Debbie Hickey. And once again, I'm writing to ask you to please pull item 18.2 from the agenda. I continue to see that you are creating new positions that cost $140,000 to help the district office managers. This is in consent agenda item 15.4, 15.5, 15. However, you are cutting employees that are on the front line of the schools, which are here to help our students, our parents, and our communities. If you think that just because students are not at school, it's okay to make the school employees school day only, then you have not been at the schools. The parents, students, community use these days to come in for help and questions. We still have mail and deliveries. It's offensive that you believe that we do not read the entire agenda. Do you really think that hiding it in the consent agenda is open and honest? I do not. I feel this is wrong, and you should be ashamed of yourselves for allowing it. You should know that the classified employees at schools would be in the place that are most needed. I will give out your phone numbers to our parents to call during the time you cut my position. I hope you answer all their questions and concerns. I hope you can print their report cards and their transcripts, and I hope that you can order supplies, because once you cut our days, it will fall back on you. Thank you for listening. I'm also making this phone call because I sent you an email, and I don't feel that you will get the email, as those have not been appropriately given. Thank you, and have a great day.
Hi, I wanted to leave a message. I am a mother of two Valhalla Elementary students, and one in kindergarten, one going into 4th grade. And I saw some information online about the agenda that the PE, as well as music, as well as counseling, might be cut from the budget. And I think it's very important to say that our kids do need some sort of outlet, as well as an incentive to want to make sure that we continue to foster their well-being with education. I think there needs to be a huge compass within that, and unfortunately, if those things are cut, then these kids won't be able to experience the full compass of what education should look like. And especially moving forward with them becoming older and wanting to have the incentive to stay in school and to college, I think it's very important for those things to be part of the budget in whatever way. I also saw that there was going to be cuts to custodians, and unfortunately, especially at this time and this need, there needs to be some sort of plan in order for all of us as parents and kids to feel comfortable going back to school knowing that it's going to be sanitized properly. And I know that cuts are being made throughout the state, but there are things that need to be put into place as far as the structure that should already be in that, in order to have a successful school year for the kids. Even if that means that, you know, we need to get more volunteers to help with, you know, making sure that the classrooms are clean, or maybe as the kids get older, letting them volunteer to help clean the classes after there's transition from first or second transfer, if there's a half day or second part of the day. I think there's so many things that need to be changed in order for this to continue to work, and I'm just really concerned that things are not going to pan out for the kids the way that we need to, and so I'm trying to advocate for them and for many other concerned parents that have also reviewed this information. I'm hoping these things will be a part of the plan, and in order to have a successful future for the kids, these are definitely things that I think need to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Hello, board members. My name is Beatrix Agronow, and I have been a credentialed school nurse with the district for over 25 years. Our job has become more challenging and the need for school nurses has increased over the years. We have many medically fragile children who we need to support. We have children in our district with chronic illnesses such as diabetes, asthma, seizure disorders. Some even need health procedures such as catheterizations, tube feedings. We even have children with ventilator dependency. Our new MOU would have decreased our caseload 1 to 2,400. This is still a very large number to manage in our current situation of COVID and school reopening, which will require more nursing intervention to support to keep our students safe. I plead that you keep our caseload as agreed upon in our tentative agreement, or even consider lowering our caseloads for student safety. Ideally, we would like to see a 1 to 1,200 numbers. I am concerned that school nurses were on the list of consideration for more cuts in August. I feel this is not a safe option, and I hope you agree and will keep our nursing staff intact. Thank you. Okay. Good evening. My name is Christina Merrick, and I'm a credentialed school nurse in Mount Diablo Unified School District. I am only 0.6 FTE, so that's 3 days a week, and this past year served at Wren Avenue Elementary, El Monte Elementary, Diablo View Middle School, and Bridge, which equated to schools receiving less than 1 day per week of school nursing services. I would like to highlight 2 points. One, at the last school board meeting, the district presented a list of possible budget cuts and listed nurses under possible August layoffs. How can the district think about laying off nurses in the middle of a global public health pandemic? The district staff students, families are all in desperate need of more school nurse services, as it was previous to COVID-19, and now the district is looking at cutting additional healthcare services, which seems quite short-sighted given, again, that the public health epidemic that has quite literally shut down the world. The credentialed school nurses are your highest licensed medical professionals in the district that work closely with all general education and special education students, and the district needs school nurses more than ever as we look at reopening schools, working and making plans with our students and staff that are immunocompromised, or plans for students that have healthcare procedures such as catheterizations, etc. And once school starts, we will be fielding questions daily, all day, about possible exposures and protocol, and working with the public health department tracking positive cases. It cannot be overstated how much school nurses are critical as schools reopen in the fall. And if anything, the district needs more school nurses, not just roughly the 14 FTE for an entire school district of 30,000, when the second largest school district in the U.S., LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified, has an agreement of a full-time school nurse in every district. In every school for every school in the district that serves over 600,000 students. Currently in the district, we have a caseload of 1 nurse to 2,700 students, and LAUSD has a 1.0, a full-time school nurse in every single school, which we do not. My second note is that during the upcoming bargaining sessions with Medea, we strongly encourage the district to honor the previously bargained for credentialed school nurse caseloads of 1 school nurse to 2,400 students. In actuality, the school nurse caseload should be even lower and similar to what was originally proposed by Medea of 1 school nurse to 1,250 students. Thank you so much.
And that concludes this portion of the public comment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you to our public for commenting. With that, we'll move along. We have item 10.1, district organizations. At regular board meetings, a single spokesperson of each recognized district organization may make a brief presentation. Items are limited to those which are informational. I do not believe that we have any of those. So then we will move along to...
A quick correction, if I might interrupt, Board President Lawrence. We do have comments submitted by our organizations.
Okay.
Currently that is attached in ESB, uploaded just at the beginning of the meeting to allow for time.
Okay. So we have from, it looks like from Local 1, we have a letter that is attached from them. So I'll call board members as well as the public, also from Teamsters. And so we've attached those. Great. Okay.
Okay, so just to clarify, they're attached on the agenda item that we're on right here, district organizations, and we can just click that.
Correct.
The PDF. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then we have, so we'll move along to 11.1. Review and potential approval of resolution 1920-31B, revisions to board meeting dates. So essentially what we've done here, in light of everything that is happening and the demands on our staff, the fact that they are working in task forces and small groups to provide information as we prepare to return to school, and with the fast moving nature of things, we wanted to, instead of calling special meetings, we wanted to go ahead. We did not have any board meetings scheduled for July, but we wanted to go ahead and put 2 of them on the calendar for July 13th and July 27th. There may still be a need for some special board meetings throughout June, July, and the early part of August prior to the return to school. But at the very least, we knew we would need to have these 2 regular meetings on July 13th and July 27th. So I don't know if any board member has anything they would like to say or any questions, any discussion prior to entertaining a motion on that. Okay.
Mr. President.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. We're all ready to get this meeting started. Mr. President, I move to that we approve resolution 1920-31B, revisions to board meeting dates.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Ms. Count, second by Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. And then we come to review and potential approval of Board Resolution 1920-67, personnel with variable term waivers for CBES for 30-day substitute teaching permits. And do we have staff, Ms. Sachs, do we have any further update on this one, or is it self-explanatory beyond that?
I believe the item is self-explanatory, and it was something that was submitted from our Human Resources Department in order to make sure that our credentialing was in order.
Oh, I'll make a motion. Do you want a motion?
I would love a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve the variable term waiver for CBES for 30-day substitute teaching permits for the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Durkee, second by Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. And so with that, we will move to item 12.1, review and potential approval of personnel appointment director of fiscal. And Dr. Gonzalez, do we look to you on this one?
Yes. So we have a recommendation coming forward this evening to approve the new Director of Fiscal Services as Mika Arbelboy.
Okay, thank you. And can you briefly share her background or her at least relation to the role as it currently sits?
Absolutely. Let me just read a little bit of a bio here. Mika was born and raised in Japan and immigrated to the United States after attending Tokyo Pacific College. She began working in Mount Diablo Unified 16 years ago as an account clerk. She's known for her work ethic, accountability, and knowledge of many roles, and has progressively moved up from intermediate account clerk to senior account clerk, accountant, chief accountant, fiscal analyst, director of budget, and has served as the interim director of fiscal services since July of 2019. She is known by many, and what impressed the interview panel was that not only can she support her staff, but she can step into almost any position in fiscal services because she's done the job before. She's a true success story, and her commitment to the fiscal operations has been noted by many superintendents and chief business officers in the past, as well as at the county office. She also has 2 children who attended Hidden Valley Elementary, Valley View Middle, and College Park High School. She was actively involved with the College Park Instrumental Music Boosters and still volunteers even though her children have graduated. She spent 10 years as a member of the Diablo Japanese American Club, the last 5 years of which has been their president. This is a nonprofit organization that runs community celebrations like the JA Summer Festival. And when she has free time, which certainly we haven't allowed her a lot of, she enjoys gardening and skiing.
Great, thank you for that. Do we have a motion on this item for this appointment?
I will move. Let me just, Mr. President, I move the appointment for Mika Arbolide for Director of Fiscal. And can I just make a comment now? I don't know if it's that I did some exploratory conversations, and one of the things I learned is that the process Dr. Gonzalez could have alluded to, a panel, was really quite extensive. Was opened up. As we know, Mika's been the interim for a while now, but it was opened up, and there was again, people that applied, and it was quite extensive. I said as she said, the panel felt strongly about Mika's qualifications and background, and I look forward to. I think it's clear, for not necessarily individual people reason, but for a variety of reasons, that the department has been under extreme stress for probably a number of years, and I look forward to with Dr. Gonzalez's help and Mika's skills, that there's the opportunity to provide strong leadership to support the employees there. And we know we have a lot of vacant positions. And so I look forward to some big steps forward in terms of the kind of the culture in the department. And I'll just leave it at that. So that's why I'm making the motion.
Okay, let's see. By far the longest.
I'm sorry, but
motion, but thank you for the 2 for 1 saved us in terms of comments. So
right.
Thank you for that. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Second from Ms. Mayo, motion from Ms. Durkee. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. Congratulations, and thank you, Mika, for your continued hard work and efforts. So with that, we move along to, the next item, which is 12.2, the review, I just clicked the wrong thing. Review and potential approval of personnel appointment, Chief Accountant, Dr. Gonzalez, I believe also with you.
Yes, and I'm going to take Board Member Durkee's lead on exactly what information you would like, since I haven't done these type of items before, to say that we had this position posted. We went through all of the applications. We interviewed all of the individuals who were qualified. It was done by a number of staff members on the team over in Fiscal Services. And we are bringing forward a recommendation for hiring Nancy Chen. She has more than 15 years of work experience in accounting and management, covering high-tech manufacturing, e-commerce, and nonprofit organizations. She's really happy to bring her intensive experience to serve the Mount Diablo school community. Outside of work, she's passionate about civic participation and community service. She currently serves as the treasurer of the Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs Association, APAPA, Bay Area region. She's also a longtime Rotarian, a member of the San Ramon Valley Unified School District Parksville Tax Committee, and the Community Outreach Coordinator of the National Alliance on Mental Health Illness here in Contra Costa County. She's also the mother of 2 children, and in her leisure time, which we're hoping she has a little of when she joins the team, she likes reading, watching movies, cooking, and sightseeing.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the appointment of Nancy Chen as chief accountant for the Mount Diablo Unified School District.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Mayo, second by Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Congratulations and welcome, Nancy. So thank you very much for that, Dr. Gonzalez. We move along to our back to school task force update. So Dr. Aguili and Ms. Sachs, I turn it to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, community members of Mount Diablo Unified. We continue on our journey with starting to create a reopening plan for the fall. The teams that are coming together, and they are teams that are very, very robust with individuals from a variety of different bargaining groups, community groups. And so we're very excited about that and to share some of the work that we've already done as well as some work that we plan on doing in the very near future. Can you advance the slide? So the planning committee is one where we're really, our main goal, of course, is to come up with a back to school plan. And we've had a variety of different online meetings with county folks, with county health. We've been on state webinars in order to gather the best ideas and thoughts and procedures from all areas, specifically in the state of California. If we're taking a look at the back to school plan, of course, there's three major areas that we have decided to organize our thoughts and protocols and guidelines under. And that would be health and safety, school operations, and then technology, teaching and learning. And as you can imagine, underneath all of those areas, there are many, many, many areas, as well as just groups of concerns, as well as questions, as well as protocols and procedures that we need to pull together as we look to the fall. Underneath each of these large areas, we're going to have designees that are going to help pull the teams together. So then we have a smaller group of folks that are going to be reporting to the task force leads. And on these work groups are where we will find students, community members, as well as staff members from all of our bargaining units. And then of course, undergirding everything is communication. This presentation tonight, and we'll be continue to present at every single board meeting, is a way we can keep the community up to date on the team's work, and especially get feedback as preliminary plans come together. Can you advance the slide? So the current representation, as I shared, we have cabinet members involved, certificated and classified staff, district advisory committee members, community volunteers. And at this point in time, we've had a significant uptick in the amount of individuals that have communicated to our office wanting to be added to the teams. We're looking for students as well. So these names are coming forward. They are identifying which group that they would like to engage in. And so additional information is going to be sent out this week with regards to task force assignments. Advance the slide. So there's a lot of information on this timeline, and actually since we posted this, there's going to be some changes and adjustments to it. But really we wanted to highlight that by the end of June, by June 30th, we really want to have a preliminary plan available to be vetted and a community survey pushed out with our first major structural pieces to what we plan on looking at for each of those three areas, the health and safety, the school operations, as well as the technology, teaching and learning. Up until June 30th, of course, there's going to be work group communications, and there might be meetings, or it might be more of a Zoom discussion. It might be more of a survey being pushed out, asking for the work group to respond or to weigh in on a particular, let's say, scenario or set of protocols. And then this information is going to be shared at the cabinet level. So then we can continue to push out to the larger group, collect feedback and input from all parts of our community, and then bring it back in for work and then to push it out again. Next slide. In July, there is going to also be that same push and pull, but again in July, the very early part of July, we'll be able to collect survey and input information from our broader community on the preliminary plan that we will be pushing out for feedback. What is not shown on this slide, of course, are the 2 July board meeting dates. And so at these 2 meetings, we will also provide feedback for the community, and a revised plan, working plan, will be completed by the end of July. Next slide. So what areas do each of these 3 large task forces look at? So underneath health and safety, social distancing or physical distancing measures, wellness checks and PPE, and of course that is an area where the county health department will be providing us quite a bit of guidance. Sanitation, mental health support, and that's not only for our students, but making sure we're there and we're thinking about our employees and what they need in order to feel comfortable about engaging back in our schools. Response to COVID-19 confirmed cases on campus. So, you know, the health department is very clear. We will most likely have cases. It's just the reality of things, but how we respond in August is going to be very different than how we responded in March. The county health department, the World Health Organization knows so much more about COVID-19, and so we'll be able to respond more appropriately. And then, of course, legal guidance and considerations. What does this reopening plan mean for the sake of leaves, as well as things such as instructional minutes? And part of that also will be addressed by the school operations group, which is actually the next slide. And school operations really includes everything that you need in order to run a school. Next slide, please. So you need to take a look at enrollment, and we've gotten preliminary data from our community that Dr. Aguili will share. That really gives us an indicator of what our community is thinking with regards to distance learning and hybrid models. Attendance, how might we track that in a hybrid model or in a distance learning model? Scheduling for students, is it a couple days a week we might open up school and have students come in? What does the distance learning option look like? Working conditions, what does that mean for our bargaining groups with regards to the work that they're going to be asked to do, since our schooling environment is going to be a bit different? Of course, implications for funding. Meals and recesses will look very, very different. And I know Director Machi has already been looking at what other districts are looking at with regards to providing lunches. PE and athletics has already popped up as something that we are creating plans around. And then, of course, transportation, because the 6 feet distancing of our students is something that also, not only in the classroom, but impacts where students sit on the bus and how many students we can actually transport on a bus at one time. Next slide. Technology teaching and learning is the next work group. And there we're talking about devices and Wi-Fi, making sure we're constantly tracking access and opportunity for our families for these tools that are so critical to learning. Our standards, curriculum, and instruction, it's something where we're looking at how do we have instructional expectations that are very explicit around a hybrid or a distance learning format. Pedagogy feeds into that, as well as assessment. And we cannot forget social and emotional learning. You know, our students coming back to us either in a distance learning format or hybrid is really going to need a lot of TLC and a lot of engagement, and really having them feel as if, you know what, the learning will continue. We've got all the supports available for them, and that the students can continue on with their education. Differentiated learning supports is all about how are we supporting the needs of our homeless and foster youth, our English language learners, our students with unique needs. All of those supports are critically necessary regardless of our educational environment. And of course, the professional learning. We want to make sure that all of our staff members are trained and ready to provide their best support for our students in our new educational environment as we look to fall 2020. Next slide. Dr. Gilly, would you like to continue?
Of course, if we can go on to the next slide, I'm going to share some of the information that we have already collected from our first round of our input that we solicited. And I think it's really important that you can see here that overwhelmingly the number of people that responded were parents in our community. So we're pleased to know that they are vested. I think the number is a little bit skewed in and of itself in the fact that many of these parents are also staff members. So the golden staff number looks a little bit smaller. There's probably a large number of staff also included in the blue number. But what's more important to note here is the red slice, which you can barely see. And we'd really like to see a much larger red slice because that's the student voice. We really don't have a lot of input there. And yet we know that if anybody is concerned about what school is going to look like in the fall, if anybody more than the parents, it's the kids. They're nervous. So we want to make sure that whatever we do in the future, we do a better job of outreaching to our students and making sure that they know we want to hear from them. So that's important. And then we also wanted to look at who was responding from which grade level. So if we can have the next slide, please. So here you can sort of see just the trend by grade level. You can see that we're kind of like at the highest participation for second, third, fourth grade. This doesn't capture, though, people who have children in multiple grade levels. They did have to pick one. So I'm not sure how that worked out. You can also see, again, about 10% of the responses were not parents. They did not have children in school. And also what's of note here is our preschool parents were very eager to participate. And the reason why that is so important is because that really is our students with disabilities mostly, or our incoming kindergartners. And we know that that's a big transition time for families, is coming into public school. So we want to make sure that those voices are heard. We did have just over 2,100 responses. So we think it's a pretty good representative sample of the community, but again, the more input that we can gain, the merrier, so that we hope that when we do send out the next survey, which will be at the end of June in response to our draft plan, we will have a larger response rate. We fully expect a larger response rate because we know that's what people are waiting for. But if people do have input in the meantime, there's certainly ways to connect with any of the task force members that we can gather that information as we're developing the plan. We're not certainly waiting to roll out a red carpet and this is it. We want to hear as we go along too, hence the task force, which last time I checked was growing by leaps and bounds. Next slide, please. So this one here is very important as we look through, not entirely what we were expecting here, but you can see about 700 of the families, about a third, strongly support a return to full-time school, whereas just about 450 strongly opposed it. So you can see that even though more people are supporting going back to school at this time, there is a lot of anxiety around people sending their kids back to school. We know that. And we talked about that before, but it could be due to a fear of contagion of the virus, or it could also be just because of them not wanting to have their kids in a school where they're in corrals and they can't touch anybody. And that's a scary world, especially for little kids. So we have to make sure, because of that, we do have the options available. And at this time, we are definitely planning for 3 different scenarios. The first one being a full-time online option for those families who really feel like that is going to benefit their children. We feel like that this closure has been quite disruptive for a lot of families and in more ways than one, but if there's anything that we can take away from it, if there's a silver lining, it's the ability to learn from what we've offered in our distance programs and continue to offer that going forward so we don't lose our students. That being said and done, if we skip to the other end of the chart on the right, you'll see that there is a very strong opposition by many people, over half our respondents, to return to full-time distance learning. For many children and many families, it did not work for so many different reasons. Either their children couldn't access the program, or they were not available to access the content that was offered at that time, during that time, through whatever medium that was offered, or simply because, we like it when kids can go out and socialize, but we're not sure at this point in time if children will be able to return full-time to school. So we are planning on looking at a hybrid program at a minimum. And again, a hybrid program can look really different. For some kids, that can look like 1 day a week, whereas our kids that need additional supports or language support or instructional supports, they may come more days a week, depending on a variety of factors, including, mostly including health guidelines. How many children can we have in a school? How many children can we have on a bus? What are the parents saying about, do they want their children to return to school, et cetera, et cetera. But we do want to make sure that it is not a one-size-fits-all option, and that we do want to make sure that there are different programs available for different types of learners. As a side note here, we do know that the county has just laid out their 4-step plan for the first time. Usually we get a notice that, you know, we're closing down in 2 hours, or we're opening up in 2 hours, or whatever the case may be. And ironically enough, as we were rolling out the task force, we got an email alert that the county was going to be opening up restaurants for eating outside, and swimming pools and dog parks. And that was just last Friday, or Thursday, sorry. And then we also know now that eat-in restaurants and bowling alleys and things will be opening up within really the quite near future, by July 1st. So although we're building a plan, we know that the sands are shifting and that things are opening, you know, more rapidly. So barring any changes, things could look different as we evolve. So we'll go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. Thank you. Something interesting is that we really felt like parents would be more concerned about their children gathering together in larger groups, but that was not the case. They really wanted us to be sure that we were staggering those times, but far more important to families was just increased hand washing and making sure that their kids stayed safe that way. That was far more important than keeping them separated. So, you know, that's a consideration for us, is increased sanitation will be more important. While we certainly want to honor all the county guidelines, again, we know they're shifting, and we know that hand washing is more important to our families. Next slide, please. All right, and here's what else was a little bit interesting and surprising for us, is that we knew that families needed flexibility, but we weren't really clear how important that was. But we see here that it is very, very important. We know that when kids are home, they're not going to get up at 8 o'clock and do their schoolwork till 3 and sit in front of a computer in neat little rows in their family room. They just are going to do their work when they need to do it because of competing other interests, such as childcare or availability of the shared family computer or things like that. So flexibility was important. But that being said and done, we also saw from our families that it was really important that they did have online discussions with their peers. It was not enough for them to simply be assigned homework through another platform such as a Khan Academy, as great as those things are, that they really did want to have some connection with their teacher and their peers throughout the day. So trying to build in that into our online model. And also our hybrid model, to the extent practicable, is important. But we do know that in a hybrid model, they will get that sort of face-to-face interaction should they come into school. So that can be handled there. And here's what else was interesting, is that during this time period under the CDE guidelines, students were held harmless. So we were not grading per se. We were certainly monitoring for participation. We were monitoring for student work, but they were not graded per se. Whereas now the students are, and their families are feeling, well, not the students because they didn't respond, but the families are very adamant that they want feedback. How are their students doing? I've spoken to several parents who were a little bit surprised when their children's report cards came out with no mark, or didn't make progress, or this model's not working for your student, and they really kind of wish they had heard that earlier in the day. So this comports with what I'm seeing amongst people I talk to physically, that people want those grades. They want to know, are my kids learning? Are my kids mastering everything? Are they doing okay? Or if not, what can I do? So that was important too. Next slide, please. This was the part that was really scary for us as we looked at the data. We see that 60% of our people are considering staying in Mount Diablo, which is really important. and 15% of people are considering moving out, which was a little bit higher than we had expected. Now, keeping in mind that if families do move out, we expect families to move in. What we don't know is what the demographics of those families will be. If they will be younger families with, no children yet, or older families, sort of doing their buy-up homes with, again, children out of the school system, or if it will be school-age children. And if we do not know where those children will fall in the grade level spans, or, what schools. So that's a little bit difficult for us to predict, but it's even more challenging when you look at 25% of our families say they're not sure. And what we really believe is that comes down to the unemployment rate. It comes down to the homeless situation, home stability situation. We know that there's been certain provisions for people who rent their homes and buy their homes based on the economy. And we don't know what that's going to play out like. So we expect a lot of those things to become a little more clear later. We are working with our Student Services Department to put links on the very front page of our website regarding enrollment and regarding disenrollment from the district, so we can have a closer finger on the pulse of that rather than waiting until schools open in September. Those things should be going up in the next day or so, because it's really important for us that we have accurate numbers so our staff are in the right place. And so when the kids show up, we're not moving them to different schools or, trying to scramble in that regard. We also did learn recently that one of our local private schools is closing down. And so we want to make sure that we have homes for those children in their neighborhoods, should their families choose to return them to public school. So as we're learning more information, we're adapting as we go along.
Dr. Aguili, could I ask a clarifying question on this? Was this the exact question, or is this a summary of the question? Was the exact question, are you considering moving out of MDUSD?
I believe that was the exact question. Yes, it was.
Because I guess the part that's maybe a little bit fuzzy is some people may have interpreted it as, are you looking to move out of MDUSD physically out of the geographic area, versus are you looking at enrolling your child somewhere else? So that would be something I'd be interested in seeing clarification on in future surveys and responses.
That would be a good thing for us to add to the survey in the end of June, where we're looking at the plan, and we could even maybe look at, is this more likely or less likely to make you move out of the district or consider an alternative site? So I think that's a good follow-up question.
Okay,
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Also, I think a lot of the questions that we've gotten from families is, will there be a homeschooling option through MDUSD, whether it's expanding horizons or some sort of a new program? So I wonder, as we get more clarity around that, if that question could be asked, because some of this group may be looking at homeschooling and may not know that that's an option through MDUSD.
We fully anticipate that will be a strand of our programs. We know that many people are scared to return their children to school, and we know that we will lose them to either online charters or those types of things. If we don't have a program for them, they will go somewhere else. So we are planning on building that out. We're not sure if that'll be through our Horizons site, or if that will be through sort of a designated teacher at the homeschool. Those things will be bargained, but we definitely will have an option for those families. We want them to have a home here.
Great, great. Yeah, and that, like President Lawrence was saying, that could be a clarity piece for a future question on a survey.
Yeah, sure.
Well, since we're asking questions, I was going to wait till you were totally done, but on the slide that you have, the question is, how strongly do you support each option? Is that data able to be shown by grade level? So, is there a tendency for parents of younger children? I know sometimes they have them at multiple levels, but I don't know if that's doable with the data that you have. Just find out that the parents of younger children might be more inclined for one or the other.
Yes, we can certainly work on disaggregating that and getting that to you.
Okay. That'd be interesting to look at too, if it's really plays, really kind of plays out that way, that it's really, that the grade level plays a big role in parents' comfort. I'm not sure it will. I just think it'd be interesting to know that.
Right, and so we can take a look at that for you and get you that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is our last slide, and it just really talks about what we're going to be doing next. And as I stated, enrollment is critical. We think it's the key to this. We know that people vote with their their wallets, which is their children and where their children are going to school. We know that if we're not offering what our families need, they will go elsewhere. And if we can keep them, we want to keep them. We'll do what that the community is needing at that point in time based on all of the different factors. So the enrollment piece is going to be a focus for us because we know that as people come back from private schools or move in and out of the district, it also impacts our inter-district transfers and our inter-district transfers, which also will have a ripple effect for children who are moving in or out of our community or in or out of alternative schools based on their acceptance or denial of a transfer. So we're going to be monitoring those trends, and as Jen already pointed out, there's sort of this, I call it like the accordion effect, for where the work group meets as individuals and then come back together as a task force and then backwards and forwards. So there's continued communication in order to get the information that we need. And I'll give you a perfect example of that, and that is with our athletics. We know that the county gave different guidance around sports programs starting, and if you drove around town this weekend, you saw all kinds of kids out there doing activities for the first time that we haven't seen in a long time. I personally saw about 3 groups out, but we are definitely working as rapidly as we can within our system to make sure that our athletic directors have the information that they need in order to be able to open up their summer conditioning programs and also work within our community athletic clubs and camps and those types of things in order that we can get the processes out to them so that they know, and we can make sure that they're following the guidelines and they're doing so safely in order that we can avoid another spike in the coronavirus. And of course, we want to make sure that we're providing regular updates to you, the board, and back to our community. So that's our plan going forward. And if you have any other additional questions, Jen and I are happy to answer them.
Wendy, if I can just add one piece, there is a new document called Stronger Together. I see you, thumbs up. And it's a guidebook for safe reopening of California public schools. And it's just hot off the press from Superintendent Tony Thurmond. It's published by the California Department of Education. And so we're just reading this as quickly as possible to make sure we're all balancing our plans. I was actually on a county call today, and really we're very much aligned with the other districts in our area. The only districts that are a little bit ahead of us are the ones that are opening up the end of July, because you can imagine when there's not even pure guidance around instructional minutes. And what does that mean when you're in a hybrid model, or how to take attendance, or all of these little bits and pieces. They're just working as quickly as possible in order to do the same planning that we are, regardless of where we are in the spectrum, full distance learning, a hybrid model, or whether or not we're able to open up a bit more widely. So I would definitely recommend this if folks are interested in knowing what the state of California is looking at for opening up our schools.
I have a quick question. I think if the teachers that have been, whose names you've been given and they're being invited in to participate, is that right? And so has that all happened already, or is that still in process?
It's still an ongoing process. We were given different names by each of the different bargaining units, and they were given a partial list of some of the names were given to us. We're not sure how that process went out, but we also, as people are emailing us and saying, hey, we want to join the task force. I mean, frankly, there's a lot of work and a lot of different questions. Okay. If people want to participate, truly the more the merrier.
Okay. So they could just contact you directly? Okay.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Contact myself, contact Jennifer, and then we definitely, the more the merrier. We have not turned anybody down, and somebody's going to have the one answer to the puzzle that we just don't have.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Will the new state guideline be a link on our website from the COVID page? Can that information be accessed for our families?
Yes, what I will do is make sure that Austin has that, and so then he can add that as a resource. That's a great idea.
Other board questions or comments?
Yes, so I was going to ask, I noticed in your timeline you said share timelines and deliverables, so I wasn't sure if there was a list of deliverables or if that was the list of deliverables that you had on, like on the health and safety slide. Was that the deliverables, or did you have a more specific list of what you intend that group to come out with in the end?
When we met on Friday, we went over the full planning document. There's a big document with all of the questions where the designees are, right? So under health and safety, for example, would be PPE, right? And under that, it talks about masks, it talks about face shields, it talks about disinfectant, it talks about gloves, it talks about all those things. So what we did is we gave the timelines backwards and forwards to the task force members and then the designees, who then are going to work with their work group members, right, the task force members, in order to get that information and the dates that those were due back. And we did send out calendar invites to all of the designees and the task force members over the weekend. Actually, we sent all those things out, so those things are on the calendar for the task force deliverables for the dates.
Okay. Okay. Is that something that the board members can see as well? Because I don't think we've seen that level of detail of.
Yeah, we can provide you with a list of those dates. We're happy to do that. Not a problem. Jen's writing it down right now. We literally sent them out last night, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. And then will there be a place where you list out sort of who's on which group, or who are at least the designees for each group, so that people have a sense of who's on these groups?
There's a document that's shared publicly with all of the different task force members, and that document has the list of designees at the top of each section. So that's really listed out on there for one of the task forces. The other ones are still updating their designees, but that is a public document. It's editable, it's readable.
So where is that document? Is that like on our website, or?
It's a Google Doc that's shared with the task force members.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. So amongst the task force, they all have that. Okay. Got it. Okay. And then I had another question. Let me think. Oh, when you look at getting the representation from the community, different people have emailed you. The piece I didn't see was the breakout of when we have, parents and community involved on the task forces, do we have them from a wide variety of our schools, or are there like a bunch from one school but zero from another? Is that something that you're looking at?
Jen,
yes, we are looking at it. Just as we've reached out to administrators, have reached out to us wanting to be on the task force representing a variety of different programs as well as communities. We've actually asked that a couple of our staff members reach out to parent groups in different feeder patterns in order to make sure we have that balance. We've also reached out to our DLAC leadership and a couple other groups, our Black Educators Association, as well as some other folks, in order to ensure, again, that we have a balanced voice as we're making these plans.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And then on the survey, did you, well, maybe you can't tell this because the survey was completely bilingual, but I was wondering how many Spanish-speaking families responded to the survey, if that's something you can tell.
We can look back into that for you and get that back to you. But it was bilingual. What we didn't want
really appreciated that was all in one place. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you do the Google Translate, it sometimes Diablo happens to be a word.
Right. Very true. Yeah. No, and I think it's great that everyone clicks the same link and it's all bilingual, so that's fine. And I think that was it. Oh, the one other question, I appreciate that you said you're going to have links on the front page for clarity on how people can register for our district or disenroll. Yes. Will there also be any information about transfers? Because you've mentioned that, that's going to affect all of our transfers. I don't know if someone newly registering can still, I know those deadlines were a long time ago to transfer, so maybe
Right. The only deadline that is still available right now is for special education placements, because those things, there's a different timeline for transfers around that process, just simply because of the fact IEPs change until the last days of school. So children may be placed at a school other than their home school just due to an IEP change. We don't have every program available at every different school. So that is the only window that is open. The other windows closed a while ago. But as students are moving out of the district and opening up spaces in schools, we're certainly looking at the transfers and, you know, can we let more people into this school, or et cetera, et cetera. We want to make sure that the classes are, you know, filled and that we're not closing classes after school starts if people want to go to that school, or moving kids after school starts if possible.
But we also want to indicate to families that a family moving into Mount Diablo School District or who has not had students enrolled in the district can enroll at any time. There's not a specific window where families are limited to enrolling. So
absolutely not. And that's why we need the enrollment right on the front page of the website. Just, okay, click here, because it's hard for families to navigate, you know, going to student services, going to this, right? It's a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so if they can enroll at any time, but they would be enrolled in their home school automatically, is what I'm hearing you say.
Right. Students always enroll at their home school. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other board questions or comments?
More to come. More to come.
So I had a couple quick ones. One, so I'm glad to see we're looking at athletics, because I know other districts are, and the county's given more guidance, and I think that's very important in recognizing how we treat our own athletic teams versus access from, you know, other organizations. So thank you for that. In light of the kind of opening, broadening of the opening, I'm hoping that for our campuses that we can start to provide more, not just for athletics, but even for individuals, people who want to go for a walk or run around the track and things like that, while balancing, you know, safety and protection of district property. I'm hoping that we can move more aggressively in the areas where we're not, you know, doing roofing and things like that, but I'm hoping we can move more aggressively to open our campuses. So that's just kind of a general comment, and I leave that to other board members if they have input they want to give there. But the other one is I just kind of want to, based on the data, based on the conversations, I think it's important that we make clear at this point, you know, at a 99% certainty, we always, I think if 2020 has taught us anything, it's to allow for the drastically unforeseen, but that we will have a homeschool option available for students who want it. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So whether or not it will be within the homeschool program proper, or whether or not it would be a full-time distance learning program that might be more connected to, let's say, the homeschool, right, in order to allow that student, that family, to stay within the community, within the school, do the online piece full-time, and then be able to gently transition into their actual school. So, you know, all of this are some nuances that we can, you know, that we are going to be working on, right, with all of our teams. But yes, it is our responsibility to do this, because we know that there might be circumstances in the future, whether or not it's another round of COVID, whether or not they're smoke days, whether or not they're brownout days, that we need to have something, or God forbid, other health issues for some of our young people. Right. We need to have these options available. So we need to build on what we know that, you know, we've learned from the spring, build out something more robust and have that available for families, so they understand that regardless of their situation, we want them to stay in Mount Diablo, and we'll have something for them that fits their family's needs.
Yep. Okay, great. Because I think going back to the survey, I think it's incredibly important that there are certain families right now who just want to know, will there be a homeschool option available for me that is a significant upgrade from the kind of on-the-fly creation that we had for the last couple of months? Because, you know, I think from teachers, from students, and from parents, I think everyone realized that that was not ideal. It was not something we had planned for, but we need a significant upgrade from that. And so thank you. And I recognize the nuance. And then the flip side is, I think that there are certain families who just said, we cannot do online learning, and that is not a fit for our family. And so based on the criteria that we have from the state and the county as of today, and again, are we comfortable saying there will be a fully on-campus experience for students? Is that the direction we're heading? And that's the intent, correct? That for someone who just says, I want, with social distancing, hand washing, the protocols, but if someone says, I'm not in a position to have my child home half the time, home every other day to do online learning, if I need my child physically in a school, we believe we will have that offering as well, correct?
Based on the physical distancing guidance that our county has issued, at this point, the numbers of students in the classroom has to be reduced.
Right.
Just as on the buses, it needs to be reduced. So at this point, that's one of the plans we have to work on, is how do we have a significant reduction of students in the classroom so we can have the physical distancing we need to, and then create a schedule by which we can support all of our students' needs.
Okay.
So at this point, President Lawrence, I can't tell you that it's full-time open doors for all students, because at this point today, June 8th, Contra Costa County is not of that same thought, hence why their guidance has words such as you must have physical distancing that then equates to a reduced number of students within a particular square footage, which we then take a look at in the classroom. So right now, what we have teams doing is they're going out to our school sites and actually measuring to make sure that we are very well aware of how many students, based on the square footage, we can actually have in that classroom and stay within the county health guidelines. If they start relaxing them, then we'll have more flexibility. But at this point, the physical distancing is something that they're keeping in place, and that's going to really determine how many days a week we can have students in, if that makes sense.
It does. And so that's what we're working towards. We need more guidance. And if we had, a certain percentage of our family say, we're opting for the all online model, that would potentially, for those who don't want that, give us more flexibility to do that. And so I think I recognize it's a continuum and we'll have to see, but I want to make sure that one, people who know, yes, I want a homeschool option, that they will have that available. And second, we are working to accommodate as many children as possible under the guidelines that we have who do want a fully on-campus model, but we're going to have to work within our space restrictions and under county and state guidelines.
Yes.
And I was just going to add, maybe, through this task force, there might emerge some really phenomenal creative idea that none of us has thought of yet, and part of it will be numbers. I think, again, Brian keeps saying too that, just want to reinvent education, there might be another piece that we're not even thinking about, another solution. So
I think this gets to the specifics of the planning and of the surveying. So what I'm hearing is that if we could get some clear data on how many parents would absolutely, if given the chance, want a full-time homeschool distance learning option, that would be important information to have. Likewise, the reverse. So I think you were starting to get at that with your question when you said, how strongly do you support each of these options? But as a parent myself filling this out, I wasn't sure what to put, because my kids could do a bunch of different options depending what is possible. But I think the question going forward is, do you feel that you absolutely need your child to have a full-time on-campus option? And let's get a sense of the numbers of that. There's various reasons for that. The parents may be, full-time healthcare workers. There may be no supervision available for the child. There may be no internet. There may be, there may be IEPs. So I think one of the ways that the planning has worked in some of these task forces is to have different priority scenarios. So one priority scenario would be, childcare is the most important, purpose of school. So we're going to make sure that no matter what, our TK through 5 population has a full-time on-campus option. And if we need to take over the middle school and high schools to do it, we're going to make sure that happens, right? That's one scenario. Another way to do it is to look at those need-based, you know, who has an IEP, doesn't have internet, or whatever the various other complications may be that where you could do it fully need-based. So I guess what I'm getting at is, as you move forward with the task force, is if they can really look at what would this scenario look like, the need-based one, what would the childcare-based one look like, and then as you survey, to be asking those specific questions to try to get a sense of the numbers.
You know, another piece of it that I need to share is there is a thought from the county health department that having cohorts of kids together is also incredibly important. Just as they said, you know, your family within your house and keeping that cohort together, that's one thing. But, you know, going out there and they're now releasing some of these restrictions. So the idea of having the groups of students and only be a smaller number, but they're together on a consistent basis as much as possible. It's all as much as possible to reduce any infection opportunity. So to that point, we've been, you know, brainstorming different things having to do with our very, very small special day class settings. They're already sometimes 9 students, 15 students. So might that schedule be a bit different? Some of these folks are our most intense, you know, students that need the most, you know, comprehensive support, and trying to do that online in a digital learning versus another group of students might be different. So I appreciate you bringing up all of these different circumstances that we're taking a look at. The county health guidance is going to be the absolute, the bare minimum that we can work from, and then we build out from that. So we're really watching that very, very carefully, their updates.
Thank you.
So Mr. Lawrence brought up opening up our school campuses to the public, not just to students for athletics. And we've received several comments from community members about adults being on our campuses when supposedly all the campuses were supposed to be closed, including those folks with walking their dogs. And then of course, the individuals were not always responsible in cleaning up after their pets. I think that if we are going to consider opening up the campuses broadly to the community, then perhaps we need to look at our signage at the entrance to school sites to make sure that folks are aware. I know some of the signs are a little worn, need to be replaced, reprinted. And also, do we need to provide more bags or something for people with walking dogs? Are dogs allowed on campus? I had assumed that dogs were not allowed on our campuses. So we need to look at our different policies to make sure that the public understands that, because it does ultimately contribute to the sanitation question. And if the broader community is on our campus, then will parents feel comfortable when their students are on the campus? So I'm just responding to some information that I've received as a board member.
And to Mr. Lawrence's question or suggestion about opening the campuses, I've always been a believer that the schools belong to the community and the district is just a steward of those buildings. So I think if it's for the health of our families to give them a place to go walk and get some exercise, then I think it's something we should make happen.
I don't disagree, Mrs. Mason. I'm just concerned about people being responsible in all aspects of that access.
Well, I was just responding to Brian. I wasn't disagreeing with you.
I would agree with both of you that we should have access where possible to the public, but give our students first priority, make sure that our athletes have access when needed, and clear signage for especially that dogs are not allowed on our fields. That was my understanding anyway, that dogs are not supposed to be on school property.
I won't segue too much, but I do feel like occasionally letting Cosmo loose at the field to chase off some of the geese and ducks and various other things has benefits, but we can take that as a future action item. So, all right, let's go ahead. Any other questions or comments on this? I just want to say to Dr. Geely and Ms. Sachs how appreciative we all are of your efforts, but everyone participating in the task force. I briefly joined in on Friday afternoon and said, how appreciative all of the board members were to the members of the task force. And I think there are over 80 people on the call. So it is already a robust group, lots of great ideas, and we're looking forward to seeing more. But thank you for the efforts already. And this was a very thorough and informative presentation. So thank you.
And I just wanted to add that while we were on this call, I just got an email from another community member who'd like to join us. So now we can count on 81.
There we go.
Was that all 3 groups, or was that just one group that was meeting on Friday?
All 3 groups met on Friday together. It was our kickoff. This is the task force. This is what is expected, et cetera, et cetera.
We're going to have to upgrade our Zoom license because now I think we've gone way over 100 based on community, and I'm not sure how we're going to do that. So we'll have to think about that, Wendy.
Okay, tomorrow.
I think it's worth it. Yeah, that can be tomorrow, but I think it's worth it. So thank you, everyone. All right, so we'll move along to item 14.1, board reports. How about, I'd love to start with Ms. Mayo. I know she has been doing a fantastic job on behalf of all the board members in terms of helping celebrate graduations. I don't want to steal any of her thunder, but I'll start with Ms. Mayo.
Well, yes, I was one of those who couldn't step back from at least being visible for the graduations. I was only involved perhaps with one in person from a celebration standpoint. It's something that is very exciting and emotional to me, so I appreciate all the sites that welcomed me. And I took a few pictures at each of them and applauded and celebrated with the staff. What I do want to say to all of our staff members who stepped up to present the graduation ceremonies for our family, and they varied from very many different types. They were from maybe 2 hours for a virtual celebration for Bridge to a more than 14-hour celebration for Northgate High School, per my understanding. Our community needs to truly applaud all the people that it took to put those ceremonies on, and also to stand there, whether it was 2 hours or 4 hours or 14 hours, to accept and acknowledge our families and the children. And also the setup that's required. Some of those setups were very elaborate. They took 4 hours to set up, and then it took another 4 hours to tear down. This was a horrendous, amazing effort on the part of our school staff, and I just want to share my heartfelt thanks to every one of them. And I think many people realized how grateful we are when the celebrations are at the pavilion, because there are many details that we don't have to worry about: the parking, the entrance, many things. This makes us more appreciative of the pavilion, but I also heard many comments from parents that they felt like it was much more personal in some instances for their students and the family themselves. So thank you to everyone involved in the graduations, and thank you for everyone that watched it online or contributed in some way to each student's celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayo. Ms. Count?
All right, congratulations to all the graduates as well. I didn't make it to nearly as many of the ceremonies, but I watched a lot of them online. So yeah, that was just, I'm so glad that we were able to provide that closure and the personalized celebration for the families and the students. And it was a huge undertaking. Much appreciation. I also want to thank all of you, our fellow board members who supported the Pride resolution last week, and then the flying of the flag that happened as well, that recognizes all of our support of our LGBTQ youth. and the policies that we have in place to support them, whether it's using the right gender pronouns or having access to a bathroom or simply having the support of teachers and staff. So much appreciation to all of you. Thank you for letting me be one of the persons who, raised the flag along with GSA President Bianca Solomon. That was a really special moment. And I also noticed we did receive a message from the census that said, in honor of LGBTQ Pride Month, the Census Bureau is highlighting statistics on same-sex couples in America. They said that actually on the census, you have the option to identify a relationship as same-sex, which provides vital statistics for advocates, policymakers, and researchers working on LGBTQ+ issues. So that census responses impact over $675 billion in federal funding for communities like ours. So let's make sure that everybody fills out the census. Don't forget, remind all your friends and family. And that's true for all of us. It's true for all students and families in the district. It makes a big difference for our schools as well. So just a reminder on that. And then just a thank you to everyone who's been really focused on, as we move forward as a district, with remote learning and with the task forces for the fall, to identify those students who might be falling through the cracks. If we've lost contact with students, figuring out who they are, where they are, what their needs are, whether it's a lack of internet, a lack of food, a lack of hygiene products, whatever those things may be, being able to identify them and then figure out what we as a school district can do in partnership with our community partners to make sure that those students and families have what they need. So thank you to everyone on that. And I'm really glad that our food program is continuing in the summer and that we're continuing to share out that information as well. And my goal is that by the time we start up school on August 13th, we'll have identified all of those students that don't have internet and gotten them all hooked up and completely set up so that they're ready to begin to do whatever type of hybrid learning might be necessary. So thank you everyone who's been a part of that.
Great. Ms. Mason?
I would just like to echo Ms. Mayo's comments about thanking all the staff that did all the work to make the graduation so special. I participated in two, the bridge via Zoom, and then also Mount Diablo High School. I was out there Friday standing for hours and helping hand out diplomas, and the families really, really enjoyed it. And I also agree with Ms. Mayo. In some cases, it was almost more personalized because the families could be right there taking the pictures of their kids and hugging their kids. And but most important, thank you to all of our staff that put in the long hours to make that happen. And that's my report.
Thank you. Ms. Durkee?
Yeah, so it's going to be very short. I want to just congratulate all the graduates. And, we keep saying to them, you're never going to forget this. I mean, we always remember our high school graduation, but, in so many ways, it's history, for them. And, was able to do a message for Concord High, which I was happy to do. And, it really tried to help them think about, the significance of this. So I just also want to, on behalf of all of us, just acknowledge the Classified Employees Week. I guess, with everything going on, was it the appropriate sort of recognition out from the central office? And so, I, again, having years of experience, having been a classified employee, I actually started as a classified employee in Mount Diablo Unified. So, want people to know that we understand and recognize the importance of everybody that works in our school district and the critical roles that they play, and certainly appreciate every single one of them. And I think, we'll have more. I'm going to save the rest of my comments for later for agenda item that we're going to be talking about. So just been kind of all consuming, I think, for everybody. So I'll save it for that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Durkee. And thank you for mentioning the Classified Employee Week, and I would echo that. And it was unfortunate that it was not acknowledged at the time, but I think we are all board members are grateful for what our classified employees do for us year round, and especially in these recent times and how they've stepped forward. So thank you for that. It is a beautiful thing to see the pride flag flying in front of the Dent Center. And so thank you to our board members for that and for helping raise the flag. And then in terms of the graduations, I just want to take a moment to say, someone mentioned earlier that I've been kind of joking about the phrase, if you've ever wanted to reimagine education, this is your chance. Well, we actually reimagined graduations, and I think there's a lot that we can take from it. In some ways, to the point about, the personalization that families being able to take those photos up close, and just the videos that were created and the amazing job that our staff did on that. We're very grateful for that. And I'll make a second Cosmo reference of the meeting, which is when I walk Cosmo around the neighborhood, one of the things I'm loving seeing is the ways that we're celebrating our graduates. And I haven't ever seen it like that. And so people have taken these up extra steps to celebrate their own graduates. And so the PFCs and the PTAs are doing fantastic work to drop off signs and just recognize our students in new ways. And so hopefully we have a more traditional graduation component next year, but I truly hope that we're reimagining graduations and keeping some of the really amazing things that we've done this year and incorporate it and just make a better overall graduation going forward. So that's the conclusion of my board report. So thank you for that. We're going to move along to the consent agenda. There is at least one item that is on there due to my mistake, and so I'll pull that. But consent agenda items listed under consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved, adopted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. So I would ask that we remove item 15.18, which is the review and potential approval of service agreement with Leadership Associates. So I do want to pull that one regarding the superintendent search. Do we have other items that we would like to have removed for separate consideration?
I would like to pull 15.6, please.
Okay.
And is that all, Linda? Are you done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would like to pull 15.15.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so we're pulling 6, 15, and 18. 15.6, 15.15, and 15.18. Do I have a motion minus those?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, having pulled 15.6, 15.15, and 15.18.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Mason, second by Ms. Cound. Ms. Cound, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. So with that, we'll move along to consideration 15.6, review and potential approval of district-wide annual fire alarm testing and inspections. Ms. Mayo, I'm guessing you have a little statement to make on this one.
Well, yes, I appreciate being able to pull it. I had asked staff some questions and I got several of my questions answered. I just want us to note that this contract has gone up. One year it went up 24,000. This last year it's going up about 14,000. There is a provision for adding additional devices when there is modernization at a school site. I'm just going to ask staff many more questions about this because I have an acquaintance, a close acquaintance who knows approximately what the salary would be for the individuals that are doing this work, and I will say that we are amazed. I think he needs to go back to work full time. Yeah. The other thing is we've had a contract with this company since, it looks like, 2011. So it's been a long-term contract. And I don't know if Melanie has any comments about it. I know I had asked questions about what was the total number of hours estimated, how many devices were being checked, some minutia detail that most of you wouldn't be interested in.
Hi, good evening. So just to kind of reiterate what Ms. Mayo had expressed, we have used this firm, Quality Sound, for multiple years. In the past, we have had some other firms kind of work in between. Normally, we do a service contract RFP about every 3 years. The last one that we did was in 2016 for a multiple year contract. So what the multiple year contract allowed us to do was contract for 1 year with an option for 2 one-year extensions, which would have brought us to this most recent, or this current fiscal year that we're in. And we did have a set price. So we paid the same amount for each of the 3 years at the $155,000 mark. One of the things that we intended to do this spring was run an RFP for the service contract again, which would bring in new, potentially some new bidders, and at a different, would be a new contract. So with COVID, we actually were delayed on that. And so we did need to go ahead and have this annual required work completed. So Ed Code allows us to go ahead and recontract with the same firm up to 5 years. So this will be our 4th year with this firm under the most recent RFP, with the intention of running an RFP at the beginning of next year for the following fiscal year. The one thing that we were unable to do was keep our set price. So the contractor was allowed to give us a cost at the going rate. So from the cost that we've spent for the last 3 fiscal years, we went up about $14,000 with this new contract. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to pull all the data for the amount of hours expected and the amount of devices at each individual site, but we are working on pulling that information together. This is a requirement that we must follow under the guidelines of government code, and this work is completed during our summer timeline, so it's important that we are able to move forward with this. So we do intend to do a new RFP for the following 21-22 fiscal year, but Quality Sound has done a lot of good work for us over the years. So we know that while the cost did increase, it is actually less than we would have expected. Construction cost is going up anywhere between 7 to 10% per year, and this is under that with the rate increase.
Great. So I appreciated the additional information. And then we have a separate contract for hydrant flushing, also for hoods, for that kitchen hoods and et cetera, that is a separate contract. So it's important that our community understand that we do have sprinkler systems on our stages that need to be tested, in addition to the smoke alarm and fire alarm systems that are across the district. So thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Is this, I don't know if you'll know the answer, but is this type of work ever done in-house by districts of our size? Or is there some reason why it needs to be an external, person who is the inspector?
We do have a fire alarm technician within the district. It's one of our electronic classifications, our electronic department classifications. I do believe that it needs to be an outside firm providing the testing. However, I would like to gather the proper information to be able to report back.
All right. Maybe one of our MDUSD grads will go into the fire inspector certification business, and
it would be great. It would be great.
Yep. All right. Any further questions or discussion? And thank you, Melanie, for the thorough presentation and answers on that. Any further questions?
I would make a motion to approve the district-wide annual fire alarm testing and inspections.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Mason, second by fire inspector expert, Ms. Mayo.
No expert.
Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. And so with that, we move to item 15.15.
That's me.
All right.
Yes. So
please start.
Okay. Thank you. So I had asked a couple questions through email and got responses, which I appreciated. I wanted to focus in on the CTEG, which is the end of the list. So this is the certificated increase, decrease FTE certificated positions. And I think you were maybe, so one thing that occurred to me is that my concern is that CTEG is one of the things that shows up in the budget as potentially being cut 50%. And so I don't know if we think we have carryover, because I notice it says 20, for the 1 year only in many of these items. And that's because are we allowed to carry over big chunks of money with this grant? We can, okay.
Yeah, yes, we are. And this is actually the award we received. What guidance we've gotten from the California Department of Education is what they've written in the May revise was any additional awards and having that reduction.
So you've already received this money for this year?
Yes.
But you can use it for next year?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then just really, because I'm just curious, is the summit, what's the pathway happening at Summit? I'm just interested in what that is.
I'm going to hand the mic over to Stephanie Roberts, who's on the screen, and she can share a little bit about the plans for Summit.
Okay, great. Thanks. Hello.
So we are expanding a construction and a transportation pathway at Summit. And so part of that was, it's actually a combination of CTEG grants, California Technical Education Incentive Grant, as well as the K-12 Stronger Workforce Grant. And part of that was expanding pathways in those two areas.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're hoping, and just to add to what Jennifer shared, we will apply for CTEG dollars. We do anticipate that as a state there could be up to 50% less, but even though this current funding is what's paying for this year, we will continue to apply because it is something that is expanding the work that we've been focusing on for so long in the last couple of years in Mount Diablo. So fingers crossed that we won't. Right now we actually have 1.1 million in grants in CTEG, which in last year we had 620,000.
Okay. So we are funded for next year, the entire year at the level that we've been getting. Okay.
More actually, yeah.
More, yeah. Okay.
More than we had this current year.
Great. Okay, good.
But we aren't expecting that dollar amount in the future grant that we apply for that would be used for 2020, 2021.
2021, 22.
Yeah. Yes, that one.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Go ahead, Linda.
So will this be a 9-12 program, and how will the students enroll in the Summit program if they're interested in these?
So my understanding is it's still in development stage. That's partially what the grant was funding us. So we don't have all the details. Through Samantha Allen and Jennifer Sachs and our Concord High staff, in addition to the counselor. My understanding is going to be more of a credit recovery focused on 9th and 10th grade, but I don't want to speak, I'm still learning in that, but I know it's an area that it's, you're talking about the pathway, right? The Summit pathway. So I was thinking of the credit recovery. I was talking about counselors, sorry.
Oh yeah, that pathway, yeah.
Yeah, I would have to default to Jennifer and Samantha on that. That's not in my wheelhouse as of yet.
At this point, Board Member Mayo, there's actually going to be a conversation tomorrow with the planning team where we're going to get more details. And if you would like that information, I can make sure that we provide you a summary.
Okay, that's great.
Any further questions?
I was just going to make a motion for you.
Okay,
so.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I move the approval of the question. Oh no, I'm sorry. You know what? My other computer just shut down. Somebody else make it because I don't have the right language in front of me. I was trying to get it off of the docket and it's not there.
I would make a motion.
I'm going to the bullpen. I need a relief pitcher. Ms. Mason, come on down.
Okay, approve the request to increase and decrease full-time equivalents of certificated personnel.
Now, okay, yes, that's right. I could have said that. I was thinking I had to do the specific item, so, okay, sorry. I'll second.
All right. Ms. Durkee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. That brings us to 1518, which is the review and potential approval of service agreement with Leadership Associates for the superintendent search. So I just wanted to make sure that folks understood what we had here. We have used Leadership Associates in the past due to their familiarity with us and a condensed time frame for the search. The cost is $3,900. There's also, if you look at the second part of it, there is the timeline. The board is hoping to interview candidates slated for June 29th during the day. And then our goal would be, after completing the validation process, this ties into with our earlier action that we had 2 new regularly scheduled board meetings, which would be July 13th or July 27th. The goal would be to ratify the appointment of the superintendent on July 13th, provided we find the right person, and with a target start date in August 1st or close to that. So I just wanted to pull this item in the interest of transparency, allow for any comments or questions regarding it from board members.
I would make a motion that we approve the service agreement with Leadership Associates.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0.
And I'd also like to note there's significant cost savings from last year's search because we're using this group.
Correct. With that, that is the end of our consent agenda and the items that were pulled from it. We move to regular business. So we start with item 18.1, review and potential approval of PARS, Public Agency Retirement Services, Supplementary Retirement Plan. So Dr. Gonzalez, I turn it over to you.
Great. So we're bringing a recommendation this evening for a partial approval of what you saw at the last board meeting. I am going to have our fiscal advisor, who's been supporting us through the Contra Costa County Office of Education, to explain and introduce this item with more detail.
Okay. Mr. Berg.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, President Lawrence, and members of the board. It's my pleasure this evening to return to you the item that came to you last board meeting. It is fortuitous for all of us to have had this couple of weeks to take a really comprehensive look at the PARS report that came last time. There's a lot of data, and the implications of implementation are significant to not only this coming year's budget and to your employees and retiree groups, but also to future years for Mountain Diablo Unified School District. The PARS offering, the Supplemental Retirement Plan offering, closed on March 27. So those who applied to participate needed to commit in writing as of May 27. That list is included, the quantity of individuals by category is included in the attached PARS report. Additionally, in your board item are 3 tables or charts that are excerpts from the PARS report. We wanted to make sure we were using the official PARS documents so that there was no confusion or no question of what numbers we were using or from where they came. Since this last meeting, the Business Services Division, as well as myself and your internal auditor, went over the PARS report very carefully and looked at it in one of 3 ways, really. There are 6 groups identified within the PARS report that have applied, and there was the potential, of course, to extend the PARS implementation to all 6 groups. with respect to replacing 100% of them. And we measured what the fiscal implications of that would be. We then looked at the same 6 groups, but said if we only replaced approximately 85%, and I'll explain the reasons why in a moment, what the fiscal implications of that would be. And then we finally looked at only 3 of the 6 groups, and I'll explain the reasons behind that in a moment, and what the ultimate fiscal implications of that would be. So what I'd like to do is go to the slides that are attached to your board item and review those with you. The first one is the 6-group scenario with 100% replacement. And as your fiscal advisor, one of the things I need to look at most closely is what is the fiscal implication to Mount Diablo Unified School District? And you see on this chart very simply, the groups that are in red or whose fiscal implications are in red are 5 out of the 6 groups, every group except the certificated non-management. And that alone, you see the 5-year implication of paying out the PARS supplemental retirement plan is an $803,000 detrimental effect to the Mount Diablo Unified School District budget. If you were in different fiscal circumstances, or if the state did not have a fiscal crisis thanks to the COVID pandemic, we may be able to have a conversation about this. But frankly, in this environment, even though year 1 has a 349,000, almost 395,000, excuse me, savings to the district, the long-term effect is economically detrimental. And so we're not able to recommend implementing the PARS program in this scenario. So if we can go to the next slide. This is the same grouping, same number of people, but you see that second column labeled number of positions not replaced. That represents the 15% that we wouldn't replace if we implemented this scenario as run. That's important because when we talk about an 85% replacement or a 15% non-replacement, there was initially some concern that we were talking about a 15% personnel reduction in the district. That's not at all what we're talking about. We're only talking about 15% of those who applied for an early retirement. So it's a much smaller number. The net number you see at the bottom of the second column is approximately 30 FTE across all groups. If we were to implement this scenario, you would see over $1.7 million in savings to the district's annual budget in the first year, which would be the 2021 fiscal year. However, in 3 of those 6 groups, if you look at the 5-year column or the last column on your right, 3 of the 6 groups, you see that they have negative fiscal implications. And at that's if we replaced at 85%, excuse me. But what we know is the psychologist is going to be necessary, and you can't hire an 85% psychologist. You need a 100% psychologist. So the fiscal detrimental effect would be even larger than the $8,200. Same is true of your certificated management. Those happen to be principals at your schools. You need 100% principals, not 85% principals. So the detrimental effect would be higher than that $31,000 figure. And for classified management confidential, it's a nominal detrimental effect, but nominal nonetheless. And so those 3 have footnotes that say we would need to replace it 100%. And in light of the fact that we're looking at an 85% threshold in order to see a net fiscal benefit to the district, we're looking at not recommending this scenario either. So that causes us to roll to the next slide, which is what we are recommending. It's looking at 3 of the 6 groups that applied for the PARS program. It's looking at an 85% replacement of each. And we believe we can accomplish this for a couple of reasons. One, again, sitting as your fiscal advisor, it is financially advantageous to Mount Diablo in that it still saves in excess of $1.7 million in this next 2021 fiscal year. But over the 5-year run, it saves a net $6.6 million to your financial bottom line. Important to note on this chart for anybody who's doing the mathematics that in year 1, it is in excess of $1.7 million savings, but you can't simply multiply that by 5 because each year the 85% replacement employees will see a salary increase through the step and column, through the salary schedules. And so that $1.7 million savings in year one will be a diminishing return over the next subsequent 4 years for a net of $6.6 million. The net reduction in positions would be just over 28 FTE. And what's important here, and we heard it as part of your return to school presentation earlier tonight, is we believe that there will be some percentage, and one of the statistics was approximately 15% said they may be considering not returning to Mount Diablo. That doesn't mean they're moving away, or it might mean they're moving away but planning to stay. But nevertheless, we know there's a high likelihood, and it's in every district in the state, of parents concerned about returning their students. And so we believe that your enrollment will be lower, particularly this fall. For that reason, there isn't a great concern about not backfilling every teaching position right away, but we want to make sure that when we save money on a fiscal year, like this $1.7 million that we're referring to, that we put it in a designated assignment within your reserve. So in the unlikely but fortuitous event that your students all do return, you will have the fiscal reserves to put these teachers back as needed, where needed. So that said, this is the recommendation of your administration. And one key to this too is that this is only one component part of the fiscal preparation for the 2021 school year. And we're happy to say, as we prepared this report and this recommendation, looking at the other parameters for your 2021 school year, that we believe if this is approved as recommended, we can most likely withdraw the next item on your agenda from needing to be considered for the 2021 school year. With that, administration is happy to answer any questions, and otherwise is recommending approval.
Thank you for that presentation. Questions from the board? Well, I'll start by just saying a thank you, Mr. Berg, Dr. Gonzalez. I think my frustration at our last meeting was the fact that one, without the board's knowledge, the timeline had been pushed back, the deadline for submittal had been pushed back, and that placed our staff in the unenviable position of trying to calculate things on the fly. We did not have the information that was needed, and what you provided here, I recognize, took a lot of hard work on the two of your parts, and as well as a great deal of work from your staff, and I greatly appreciate that and think this is very concise and informative. So other board members, questions, comments?
Yes, thank you. I would, I appreciate, again, the explanation, and what and I understand why this isn't available, because these are created by PARS and their standard way of doing, but I think for complete understanding of what we're looking at, what was helpful to see is the three of these that we're seeing on the screen now, and then adding the three others, but at 100% replacement rate, because is the advice we're getting is the more realistic reality that they would need to be replaced at 100%. And so I kind of did that myself. And I guess the most significant number is when you go out to the 5-year saving. It reduces the saving, by my calculations, by over $797,000. And so it's still a net savings, but and I'll share, in the first year it reduces it by $114,000, closer to $115,000. So my question would be to, in terms of your last statement and being able to not have to go through with the reductions, it's our next agenda item, would that scenario also enable us to not have to go through with that?
We looked at that scenario as well, and you could do that scenario, but you're right. The fiscal implications is almost an $800,000 swing in the 5th year, and the complication with that in your district budget is that we can't just look at the 2021 school year. We have to look at a multi-year projection under Assembly Bill 1200. And again, I'm charged as an agent of the county office, Contra Costa County office, to look at that multi-year projection. And that said, if we had to extend it out, which we do, that loss of savings, if you will, that would be enough to trigger probably still needing to consider the PKS for the classified employees, which is why I went ahead and included that in the presentation. I wanted to make clear that in the event we can do this as recommended, the PKS item will not be necessitated this year. But if we don't, and we were to consider doing the 100% replacement of the other three groups, we would go ahead and have to consider the PKS reductions or something else of
Okay, so thank you. I needed, and so I'll just take one more minute to share why I was trying to make that work. And I just feel like, Mr. Lawrence alluded to some of it is this, there's been a lot of challenges throughout this process. And I honestly, very sincerely say, I'm not looking at there's any one person or one department or any entity is to blame. It's just the way it unfolded. And, when I realized the amount of commitment that individuals needed to make just to even pursue this, it's pretty intense and it's a commitment. And here we are, June 8th, and having retired from Mount Diablo, I know by June 8th, I was I was ready to be retired at June 30th. And so you're well down the road with your, whether it's PERS or STIRS. So it just concerns me that we didn't get all this figured out early on. I think it was mentioned a meeting or two ago that one possibility is we wouldn't even have offered it to all the groups. And, it's all making sense to me now that the reason you might think about that is the difference, between a more entry level or first year, early years teacher versus a more senior teacher. The difference in salary is pretty significant, which doesn't occur with these other employee groups in the same way. And so you're not going to get the, thinking just from purely a fiscal opportunity. Again, for us, the fiscal opportunity is reducing the number of cuts that we have to make. So anyway, that's why I was spending a lot of time on this, really thinking about it, because I felt like those folks have already signed up, they're planning on it, and to now have to say, sorry, it's not going to work, just doesn't feel good to me personally. But it also doesn't feel good to me to have to make a lot of horrific cuts too. So I feel like I have to take the advice of our fiscal advisors. So thank you for helping me with all that.
And Joanne, I would agree with you. I think this could have all been avoided if the board would have gotten the information the way it was presented tonight, right, way back. It didn't have to be the exact numbers, but an idea, this is how it works. And if the people that were encouraged to sign up, it was clear to them, the board's going to have to take a look at this and make a decision on what is going to help move the district forward. So maybe all of them don't get approved. If everybody would have known up front what the real decision was going to be, it wouldn't be. I'm with you. It's very tough. You offer something and then you take it back. I don't like doing that. But again, to agree with you, one of our number one jobs is be fiscally responsible. And that's why I would be taking their suggestion as well.
So it looks like Linda Mayo is the only one hanging out there now. I do understand the fiscal implications. I had cautioned everyone that in previous times, the only group that this worked with, supposedly would work with, was the certificated non-management groups, and we had never offered it to other groups before. I feel like we misrepresented this situation to our other groups. And when I look at the numbers and the three that we're recommending to move forward, there are 1,157 candidates that were eligible to apply, and only 189 of them did, which was 16%. For the other three groups, 52 were eligible, if I'm looking at the right numbers, and 12 of them applied, which was 23%. So in actuality, a larger number of the folks from the groups that are not being moved forward tonight took up the offer. And yes, statistically, financially, it looks like it doesn't work, but I still feel like we've always provided the Me Too opportunity for our groups, and that in particular, these groups haven't, they don't enjoy the same salary scales that their peers do in other school districts. Mount Diablo just doesn't pay a lot. And many of these people have put in, 30 years, 25 years and more to Mount Diablo School District. And to say some people are eligible for this and others aren't, it just breaks my heart. I will support the main motion, but I intend to make a secondary motion for you to consider, and we can vote on it and then move forward. Thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? I think for the public out there and some of our employees, they're wondering like what groups they're even in, because we don't have each of our bargaining units separated out here. We have CST, but then our Teamsters and our CSEA, I'm assuming those are classified non-management, but who is, and it was explained that certificated management is principals. So classified management confidential, is there a bargaining unit that covers those employees?
Well, okay, so if I can just explain the ones you're seeing here, the certificated non-management would be our teachers, our media members. Our classified non-management would be our Teamsters and our CSEA. Our CST listed there would be our local AFSCME 1. Our classified management confidentials are part of Diablo Management Association, DMA. And yes, the principals and anyone who is in a position that requires a credential. So a number of the folks in like human resources, assistant superintendents, usually your ed services side of the house, a lot in special education also, they would be considered certificated management.
And then MUDSPA is the psychologist.
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I think for me as well, it was frustrating to hear at the last meeting that PARS, the staff knew that normally it doesn't pay out to offer it to these other groups, yet we offered it to the other groups. I'm hearing you, Ms. Mayo, that you warned us of this. I think what I didn't understand back then was the depth of the process that people were going through. I thought they just needed to say, yes, I might be interested if this goes through, not that they would go through all the full paperwork and planning of their full retirement before we came to a decision. But it is really frustrating that we're at the place where we're at. But likewise, I realize that if we vote in all of the groups, then we're prioritizing, in a way, we're prioritizing funding people's retirement over other current employees where we may need to be making cuts there because we're in the fiscal crisis that we're in. So it's a real tough bind and place to be. I feel I'm glad that we're able to offer it to at least the 3 main groups, and including particularly the one that did have a specific MOU around PARS that the other groups appear to not have bargained as well.
I don't understand what the bargain was for PARS. The only thing that I understood about the bargain for the certificated non-management was that they had individuals who were eligible to retire at a much younger age. Is that correct?
What?
Was it at 50? the age 50?
Right. I thought that that Medea specifically bargained a discussion around PARS, which included the age 50, but it also included some deadlines of when these decisions would be made, and that if they had over 70 people, that it was essentially going to be approved because it was already determined that it would fiscally work out at that point. We became aware of the MOU with Medea at the last meeting, but I don't believe that there were MOUs around PARS with any of the other groups. Is that correct?
That is my understanding as well, but I also heard from one individual that although it wasn't in writing, the other groups were told if their number reached 70, which it does for the groups when you exclude certificated non-management, that they would pass the test. But that information is not in writing on page 2 of the document that was provided to the individuals as they applied. It's only that number 70 is only in the certificated non-management. So that information was shared verbally, but not shared in writing with the other groups.
So you're saying that people's understanding was as long as there were at least 70 certificated non-management, that the PARS would be voted through for all groups?
No.
As a verbal agreement?
No. It definitely said 70 for the certificated non-management. The other bargaining groups were told verbally that if their groups combined groups met 70, then they would be, their PARS participation would be approved. We weren't at the meetings and the information isn't in writing. So it's basically he said, she said, or she said, he said.
Yes, unfortunately.
I'll just simply state that the information that was given to this board versus the information that was given to our employee bargaining units, there was a pretty big gap as near as we can tell. And that's frustrating for this board, and that's extremely frustrating for our bargaining units as well, for their employees. The way this was presented to the board was that we think this program might save money. We want to go out to our employees and see who might be interested, and based on that, calculate the savings. And if it makes sense, then we would bring it to the board. And I think the communication that went to our employee groups was very, very different from that. There were also, the MOU was not brought forward, and what Ms. Mayo just shared was never shared with this board, at least that I'm aware of. So I think we've taken steps as a board to address, to make sure that type of thing does not happen again. As people wonder about some of the decisions the board has made in recent weeks, and I think that gives some insight into it. But do we have further questions regarding this topic?
I would make a motion that we approve the Public Agency Retirement Services Supplementary Retirement Plan.
Okay. Do we have a?
I would recommend that you state the titles of the 3 groups.
Well, it's on the agenda. It's the only one that's presented, I believe, or recommended. But it was certificated, non-management, and I don't have it in front of me.
Classified non-management.
Classified non-management and
CST.
Yes, CST.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0.
Mr. Lawrence, will you indulge me?
Yes, ma'am.
I move that the board approve the PARS package for the 1 psychologist, the 7 certificated management members, and the 4 classified management confidential members who enrolled for the PARS program.
Okay, motion by Ms. Mayo. Is there a second? Okay, motion has died for lack of a second. With that, we move along. To our next agenda item, which is 18.2. And so I would ask Dr. Gonzalez and Mr. Berg, so item 18.2, review and potential approval of resolution 19/20-47C to reduce the number of classified employees based on a reduction of a particular kind of service, a PKS. Do we have a recommendation from staff in light of the previous decision?
Yes, President Lawrence and board members, at this point in time, I would like to pull the resolution for any reduction of particular kinds of service. We would not plan on revisiting this at this point in time. We feel that we have the reductions necessary to move into 2021.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from board members regarding this? So I would just make a comment. I know we've had this on there multiple times. That is very disconcerting for employees. This has been a very long and arduous process. We certainly need all of our employees as we look at how we're going to reopen schools in the most effective way possible. But I do think the one thing I would call out in this document is the fact that if our board is faced with having to make additional cuts, the type of cuts that are encompassed in this document are very painful, as all the cuts we've made to date would be, and very unpalatable. But these are the types of situations we may be faced with if we have to make further cuts down the road. So I would just leave it with that. But thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for that. So I would move along to item 18.3. Review and potential approval of board resolution 1920-68 condemning violence, racism, and injustice and reaffirming equity and humanity as central guiding principles. And so I think, I know several of the board members wanted to speak on this one. I think that, as we heard from our students this evening, as we view recent events, the tragedies and the inequities that are in our current system become more and more apparent. And so we wanted to take a strong stance here. What I would suggest, if the rest of the board were amenable, would be that we as a board would read this, that one board member would go first, not alternating sentences or anything, but we could split it into to chunks, or perhaps chunks of 4 or 5. If other board members kept going, I would bow to them. If there's room at the end, then I'm happy to read a part, but that we would actually read the resolution aloud, because I do think this is rather profound in terms of what's happening with world events. And then presuming this passes, I would like to take a moment of silence and reflection at the end of this. But prior to doing that, I would hope after the vote that we could perhaps all take a moment or two to share any thoughts on this before moving to the next item. So if we would like to have a motion, and then we would read it, and then have a motion, a second, then I'd like to have the motion, the document read, and then take the vote, is how I would suggest we proceed. So is there a motion? Yes.
Before we go there, we did have a public comment, I know.
Okay.
And I'm all for reading it, but can you put it on the screen? Because I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Okay.
So yes, I apologize. Thank you. So can we go ahead, staff? Could we play the public comment on item 18.3, please?
This is a comment for agenda item 18.3. Good evening, board. My name is Dan Reynolds, and I'm a parent of 2 MDUSD students, as well as a graduate of MDUSD schools. I want to commend the board for bringing forward Resolution 1920-68 and urge the board to vote in favor. I am thankful the board is taking this action. I would ask the board to consider striking whereas statement number 6, as I feel it runs counter to the anti-racism message of the resolution. Also, I want to deeply urge the board to not let this be a token resolution, but to back it up with real, meaningful, anti-racist policies, procedures, practices, and programs. What follows is a list of things you as board members can do and things you can direct district staff to do to be more actively anti-racist. Work to ensure all educators receive comprehensive and effective cultural competency professional development repeatedly. Support educators in developing and using culturally relevant curricula. Improve practices for recruiting and retaining more educators of color. Call out racism in local media, including on Clay Court, and in social media, including on Nextdoor, Facebook, and Twitter. As a board and as individuals, take a stand and work to ensure we are fully funding education, especially programs and services that address the needs of students of color. Take steps to direct staff to minimize opportunity hoarding. As a board and as individuals, continue to stand against efforts to resegregate schools, including standing against white flight to private schools, efforts to create richer, whiter districts, or segregationist charter schools. Dismantle language barriers and racial barriers to gifted and talented programs. Take steps to eliminate disproportionality in identifying students for special education services. Undertake a serious and exhaustive review of all existing board policies and administrative regulations to ensure that they are actively anti-racist. Eliminate all school resource officers. Policing in schools is racist by design and in practice. As a board and as individuals, take a stand against state standardized testing. Opt out our entire district. Standardized tests are racist by design. Eliminate all district standardized tests. As a board and as individuals, advocate for the end of average daily attendance as a methodology for calculating school funding. ADA harms students of color by denying their schools and districts funding and resources. Put in place policies and procedures that address disproportionality with real efforts to address improved learning outcomes. Dismantle structures of exclusionary discipline. Pursue equity by substantially changing unequitable structures, policies, and practices.
Okay, thank you for that. And so I have
it in front of me now, Brian.
Oh,
so
okay. I was going to say I'm able to pull it up if needed, but needed. And actually, if we could, staff, I'm happy to. Could we either, Ms. Mayo?
I would like to propose 2 word amendments before we adopt the resolution, if you're willing to consider them.
I certainly am.
Okay. It's in the first one would be in the, well, they're both in the first, therefore be it resolved. The word wholeheartedly struck me as just not being appropriate in the tone, because wholeheartedly means complete sincerity and commitment. My preference would be either to strike the word, insert adamantly, or insert vehemently, depending on the pleasure of the board. Because to me, wholeheartedly is a joyful word, whereas this is a very serious statement, a profound statement, and I just felt a different word was needed there. The other item that I would like for us to consider would be to add the name of Miles Hall to the list of names, which is a recent situation in our Contra Costa County.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion with perhaps substituting adding the name Miles Hall to the therefore be it declared paragraph, and at the same time substituting the word perhaps vehemently for wholeheartedly.
Can I make a suggestion of that? I don't think you need anything there. Condemns is, it almost
condemns.
like takes, I mean, condemns is there. So Board of Education condemns, that's pretty, are you okay with that, Ms. Mayo, that it should not have anything in there? Yeah.
That's fine.
I think that's an excellent point that you're making, and I think just the word condemn by itself is powerful.
Yep. Okay, would someone like to make?
So I'll move to make the wording changes per Ms. Mayo's recommendation, including removing the word wholeheartedly and adding the name of Miles Hall.
Okay. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to ask of staff if we could possibly increase the size on that. So thank you for putting it up.
No, they can't.
They can't. Okay. Well, then we will go ahead. And Ms. Mayo, would you like to perhaps start us off? And what I would suggest is just when a board member, we could go Ms. Mayo, Ms. Cound, Ms. Durkee, Ms. Mason, and then, like I said, if you would like to leave room for me, I'm happy to do so if the other four board members, however you would like. People have heard a lot from me this evening, so I will leave it to you. But Ms. Mayo, would you like to start us off?
Whereas the world has witnessed the brutal killing of George Floyd, a killing in which now ex-police officer Derek Chauvin smashed his knee into the neck of George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And wherein the final 2 minutes and 53 seconds, Mr. Floyd was already non-responsive. And
whereas the knee-on-neck manslaughter we have witnessed serves as a symbol and a metaphor for the unjust societal and systemic inequities that Black people experience, where cries for help have been largely ignored. And whereas George Floyd's killing is contextualized by a poisonous cultural ideology on the basis of which Americans are tragically and regularly treated differently because of their race. And
whereas the Mount Diablo Unified School District refuses to remain silent about racism and injustice, instead encouraging our students, staff, and families to speak openly about institutional racism and current events, and to teach about civic actions that effectively change policy and laws in our country. And whereas the Mount Diablo Unified School District fully recognizes the right of the public to protest, and that a collective voice is integral and powerful to combat racism. And
whereas the Mount Diablo Unified School District also fully values all of those men and women in law enforcement who strive to do their difficult job to serve and protect the discernment and integrity every day. And whereas Mount Diablo Unified School District humbly recognizes that board policies 5001, 0411, and 61464.42 have hereunto defined the district's stance on equity, non-discrimination, and disproportionality. And
furthermore, whereas the Mount Diablo Unified School District is committed to taking concrete steps to achieve equal opportunity and success for students of color, and recognizes its responsibility to uphold the humanity of Black lives.
Therefore, be it declared that the Mount Diablo Unified School District Board of Education condemns the killings of George Floyd and that of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless other children, men, and women who have had their lives cut short as a result of police brutality, vigilante aggression, and institutional and systemic racism. These names have been painfully added to the long list of Black Americans, including Emmett Till, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin, Tatiana Jefferson, Alton Sterling, Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, Ayanna Stanley Jones, Tamir Rice, Oscar Grant, and Miles Hall.
Mr. Lawrence, do you want to finish? Do you want?
Be it further declared that the Mount Diablo Unified School District reaffirms equity and humanity as central guiding principles for district actions and policy making as we continue in the battle for justice, a battle we indeed must face together to create a future in which the legacy of racism, bigotry, and unequal treatment no longer poisons our society, and in which instead we achieve the ideals of equity, peace, and belonging. So thank you. And with that, let's go ahead and I will call for the vote. Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. And what I'll ask is that if we would take a moment and to reflect on this this resolution as well as what is happening in the world. So we'll pause for one moment. Okay, thank you for that. With that, I would open it to board members for comment.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining together unanimously in this vote. I want to say thank you also to our equity director, Jorge Melgoza, who worked on the writing of this along with Austin Breitenthal, and as well as NAACP East County, Willie Mims, and to everyone who has encouraged us and supported us to support this resolution and do the work. Thank you all.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Cound, for your efforts in helping coordinating the writing of the resolution. Other board members?
No, I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank Ms. Cound also for her work on this. Everyone else you mentioned, I thought it was really, really well done. I was really happy to see it, and again, thank like you, everyone else, for supporting it. You know, it's just so hard to think about anything else right now, and I have to, you know, I have to remind myself, you know, to look at, you know, where we need to celebrate, like the graduations or whatever, but it's just all so consuming. And as I said earlier, when we were talking to the students or listening to the students, is, you know, I'd like to think I'm pretty enlightened, you know, my long years, but you know, we all can still learn so much. And I think, you know, that's one positive is, you know, so many opportunities now for us to continue growing and learning. And, you know, I was thinking of, you know, as our roles in this as board members, our roles as who we are as people, all, you know, white people, what is our contribution? And so I think it is to model continued learning, you know, that we just are continually seeking out, trying to understand as much as we can. And so I thought about people that I know that I could reach out to and have some really long conversations with a few folks. That one really close friend, and she has sent some information to me. I did post something on Facebook, I think today, and I want to share one specific article, which is what I posted. It comes from something called the Good Men Project, and the specific article, she sent me several, but this one is called White Fragility. It was really, really good. It's really worth reading. It's hard to read at times, but it's certainly, you know, again, enlightening and very educational. So I wanted to just share that out with as many people as I can think of. One phrase, that popped out is having humility to racial illiteracy. Sometimes we're all great orators and speakers, but, we can't really say we really truly understand the racial issues. And of course, as we say in our resolution, recognizing, seeing the systemic racism. I also, on a very positive thing, have appreciated the number of emails we've gotten from people at site principals, teachers. It's been very heartwarming. Of course, they're basically, encouraging us to support this resolution. But, just them, it created this opportunity for them to share more specifically, the work that they've been doing with their students at their sites. That was fabulous to read. It was just really wonderful to hear so many things, and again, I probably wouldn't have heard that, had this opportunity not presented itself. So, in particular, Mrs. Perkins, Valley Verde, I know we all saw this, but a good reminder, the very end of her quite detailed description of the work that's going on there and what needs to happen. She shares the quote from Dr. Maya Angelou, is do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And I thought that was really great, because I think sometimes, I don't know, I just speak for myself, I beat myself up about not knowing better, not having known better. And that's why I keep saying, even at this point in my life, I can continue to learn and help other people learn, to make it safe for people to seek out information and try to look at things differently. And so I just encourage people, just watch John Oliver. I recorded it the other night. That was mind-blowing. Oh my gosh, that was such a good history, And so history tells us a lot. Willie Mims is great for history, he's always sharing some piece of history. So I guess I'm just, as adults, to model for everybody that, we are lifelong learners, and that's really what we should be focusing on too. So I'm, super cautious. I've shared this before in terms of the pandemic and my family and my husband's health and my little guy's health and all that. So I'm probably an extreme end of being very cautious. So I'm not out and about a lot. I can't physically join protests, but I found out there's one online that you can do that. So I'm going to check that one out too. So anyway, that's all. I could babble on, but thank you for letting me share.
Thank you.
I would say that for me, it's long overdue. Growing up in the community that I grew up in, I've seen racism day in and day out. I think people fooled themselves when they think slavery ended it. Our government just tried to find one way after another to hold down the Black people, to lock up the Black men in jail, now to kill them in the streets under the name of law enforcement. One of the main reasons I sit on the board today is because my dedication to social justice and the time I've spent getting on every county committee, school district committee I could get on to speak for those people that often didn't feel like they could speak for themselves or that their words weren't welcome. And I'm very proud of the board for taking this stance.
Ms. Mayo, anything you would like to share?
Yes. For me, my comments are going to be a little bit different than the rest of yours. For me, the world stood still when George Floyd said two things: I can't breathe, and his plea to his beloved mother. What mother or father hasn't held a crying child in their arms and was powerless to help that child? Like some others, I am mature in years, and I've been educating myself on the different issues and trying to understand different viewpoints and trying to undo some of the misconceptions I grew up with. I believe every day we need to analyze our actions for the day to determine if we have allowed biases to creep in to our activities during that day. This past week has brought me to believe I must do more, speak out more, and listen much, much more. I pledge to strive to be more open-minded and fully invested. I believe Black Lives Matter is the minimum, like one of the signs said. Black lives are worthy. Black lives are beloved. Black lives are needed. There's a lot of work to be done. Let the work begin.
Thank you, Ms. Mayo. So I would just start by saying I'm very proud to serve on the board with all four of you, and I appreciate your thoughts. You know, for me, Ms. Durkee, to your point, so my wife has bought 10 copies of the book White Fragility and is loaning them out. So if you'd like not just the article, but the actual book, and all she asks is that once you read it, that you pass it along. And then I went to, our family's gone to several of the protests, and I went to the one on Friday in Clayton. And it was a incredibly powerful and incredibly inspiring one. And when we reached the Grove in Clayton, the organizer asked all of the Black members of the protest to come up to the front. And it was one, I think many people were struck by how few of them there were in this march. And two, they had a march on Tuesday, and just about every person there said they had not been there on Tuesday because they were afraid, and they, you know, generally did not come out for these types of things. They did not feel comfortable doing so. But the part that struck me was, and it was people of all ages talking about racism. And there were two girls, one of them age 8 and one of them age 11, which is the exact same age as my two daughters. And these are, they were both, it also struck me that they were born after Barack Obama was elected president. And so for us, this idea that by electing a Black man to be president, we had healed the racial divide in America. But they spoke, and their mothers spoke. And one of them talked about how her daughter, who is obviously incredibly intelligent, had been at an MDUSD school in 1st and 2nd grade. And she was consistently pulled out of class for testing and for other things that they couldn't explain and she didn't understand. And the only thing that they could attribute it to was that little girl's race. And so she is no longer an MDUSD student. And the other girl was a student is a student at Eagle Peak. And she talked about how her teacher, who I'm sure was an incredibly well-meaning teacher, would always come up and pat her hair. And that, although I'm sure there was good intention behind that, the feeling that she was made to feel different and singled out and not included. And one of the other speakers, which brought me back to our conversation earlier tonight, talked about not the overt racism, but the microaggressions, the everyday indicators telling these children that they're not good enough, they're not worthy, that they're less than. And, you know, I appreciate that we've taken this action tonight, but it certainly left me coming to grips with our failures as a school district, our failures as a school board, my failures as a school board member, and my failures as a human being to, you know, continue adequately address these things. And so I think that, you know, this is a first step, but it is merely that. And our actions following this are much greater than the resolution that we just passed, eloquent and profound as it was. I think it's a clear indicator that the work has only begun. So thank you for that. Thank you for everyone for their thoughts and their efforts on this. And And then we can go to our next item, which we move along to item 18.4, review and potential adoption of board policy 1415, MDUSD equity policy. And so do we have a staff update on this in terms of what is being reflected here? Otherwise, if board members want to comment on in terms of the revisions on this. Is there any staff update? Otherwise, Ms. Cowan, perhaps you could go ahead and give a little insight as how this aligns and with, I'll just turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so this board policy started off as a sample policy that the State School Boards Association created in 2018. So what we've done is start with that sample, which we know aligns with all of the state laws and Ed Code and all of those pieces, and then simply adapt it to Mount Diablo Unified School District. So this is with input from our equity director and the NAACP as well, and really looking at taking the important work that's already happening in our school district and the deep work that's happening in many of our schools, and being more intentional about it, more comprehensive, and providing direction as a board that this is our intention district-wide, to be looking with an equity lens at the various decisions that we make, whether it's hiring or our budget or our programs. So each of those pieces are included here as well.
Thank you. Do we have, please.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that you took the CSBA model policy and adapted it for Mount Diablo. What additions were made specific to Mount Diablo?
So, well, first of all, putting the words of the district instead of sample. Let me think. There were some specific additions. It was mainly wording changes and things like that that were more specific to what we're doing. I want to say in the section, let me see. Towards the end, there's a section that's number 8. Let me see what section that is. Yes, number 8 at the very end. Says providing district staff with ongoing research-based professional learning and professional development on culturally responsive instructional practices. The piece that was recommended by our equity director was adding the words "and supporting implementation of such practices." Keeping the focus on, I think sometimes it's taken as this is sort of an optional training. People go through the training and there's no expectation that it would actually be implemented in any way. So that was a desire to make sure that we're supporting our administrators and our teachers all the way through implementation with the professional development that we provide. I would say that was probably the biggest change that was made. There was a part in the very beginning, second paragraph, in order to eradicate institutional bias of any kind, we added "and racism." To be clear that this is not simply about bias, but to specifically call out the word racism there.
Okay. And this was reviewed by legal counsel to see if there were any issues. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve Board Policy 0415, the MDUSD Equity Policy.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion Ms. Cowan, second Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Cowan?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move along to 18.5. Review and potential approval of revisions to Board Policy 5116.1 and 5117, intradistrict and interdistrict enrollment. Do we have a staff report, or recommendation on this one?
I believe, I don't see Cesar on the call, but I believe this was the one that he was agreeing to pull.
That's
President
what I thought. That was my understanding as well. So
Okay.
I think at this point, unless we hear something to the contrary, we will go ahead and pull this one for now, unless any board member objects. Okay. 18.6, review and potential approval of comprehensive school safety plans. We certainly recognize that the school safety plans are going to undergo further revisions and that this is a very much a work in progress. Ms. Sachs, I turn it over to you.
Yes. So these originally came to you for a first read, I believe, in February, probably maybe the very first meeting of March. But as we know, all of our safety procedures and everything having to do with health and wellness is going to be looked at through a very, very different lens from this point forward. This is just one of those things that is hanging out there for right this second, and we are out of the timeline that the state of California has for these types of plans. So our recommendation is to approve these tonight. They are available on the website. We did double check on that after they were brought forward for information. And that we do, as new guidance becomes available, we take a look at those as we open school in the fall to determine what types of updates and revisions are required and necessary based on county health guidelines.
So I would make a motion that we approve the comprehensive school safety plans.
Second.
Okay, do we have any questions or discussion prior to calling for a vote? Okay, Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. So we move to 18.7, review and potential approval of classified job description, transportation coordinator. Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes, thank you. So this is a new position that we are creating. However, we are creating a new position by taking two former positions and putting them into one. So what we would be doing for this is we would be taking the Director of Transportation, which is a range 18, and the Vehicle Maintenance Manager position, which is a range 8, and we would be creating a new Transportation Coordinator position that is a range 12 that would have the duties of both. So the change to this is a savings of approximately $96,000 to the general fund.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from board members prior to calling for a motion?
The two jobs that you're eliminating, are they vacant?
No.
One will be vacant and one has someone in it.
And so that person would be given the opportunity to apply for the new position, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Thank you.
I had understood he was retiring.
Correct. Yes, the first position, when she said, is it vacant? I said it would be. So yes, he is retiring.
Okay. Other questions? Great. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I'll move to approve the classified personnel appointment of transportation coordinator.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Durkee, second by Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
So I'm sorry, this says we're approving the appointment. Is that what we're doing? I just was reading the docket because up above it says, that's what I read. And as soon as I read it, it didn't make sense. There's review and potential approval of the job description. So let me restate my motion. I think it's worded. Is that right?
Yeah, on the agenda it says job
recommendation. That the subject is correct. The recommendation that goes with it has been misworded. So thank you. For that.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'll withdraw
Okay,
that
please.
one. But so I move to approve the new job description for transportation coordinator.
Okay.
Which is what I thought I seconded.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's what
Ms.
I thought.
Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move to 18.8. Review and potential approval declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Ms. Sachs, do we have a overview or presentation on this or commentary, or should we just move?
I believe the information in the description is pretty self-explanatory. It really is a regular board docket which comes forward just saying in the event that we need to hire teachers on emergency permits, it gives us, we have to anticipate a particular number that we would need to hire throughout the entire school year. And so it just gives the permission to the credential office and the human resources team in order for them to be able to follow up, and especially for those hard to fill areas, such as special education, as well as our BCLAD teachers.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move the approval of the declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
I'll second that.
Okay. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move along to 18.9. Review and potential approval of CUP-CCAA bid number 1867, site adaptation of one relocatable classroom at Bancroft Elementary School. Questions for staff on this one? Okay, do we have a motion? Anybody want a motion?
I'll do it. Mr. President, I move to approve the award of CUP-CCAA bid number 1867, site adaptation of one relocatable classroom at Bancroft Elementary School to A&E EMAR Company.
Second.
Okay. And I'm sorry, was that Ms. Mason who seconded or Ms. Mayo?
Mayo.
Okay, Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move along to 18.10. Review and potential award of bid 1868 egress lighting for College Park High School.
I would make a motion we approve the bid number 1868 for egress lighting for College Park High School.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Ms. Durkee. Ms. Durkee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move to 1811. Review and potential authorization for the CBO, Chief Business Officer, to be designated signer in place of the superintendent for purchase orders, payroll checks, and accounts receivable checks. Do we have questions regarding this item? Okay.
Is there normally just one signer on these types of checks? Thank you.
Okay, so the answer was yes. So it's in lieu of, not one person signing in lieu of, not one person signing in two places. Correct, Dr. Gonzalez?
That is correct.
Yep, thank you for that clarification. So do we have a motion?
All right, Mr. President, I'll move the approval of authorization Dr. Lisa Gonzalez, Chief Business Officer, to be designated signer for the district in the absence of superintendent for the following items: payroll checks, accounts payable checks, and purchase orders.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Durkee. Do we have a second? I'll second. I vote yes. How do you vote, Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
All right, item passes 5-0. Moving us along. 18.12, review and potential approval of resolution 1920-69, authorization to make year-end budget transfers. So we've had discussion regarding this item before. Do we have further questions, or else would someone like to make a motion?
I would make a motion to the approval of resolution 1920-69, authorization to make year-end intra-budget transfers.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Second by Ms. Mayo. Thank you, Ms. Mayo. How do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move to 1813. Review and potential approval of resolution 1920-70, intent to grant easement deed to Pacific Gas and Electric to allow construction on and access to district property. Do we have questions regarding this? Okay, do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve resolution 19/20-70 of intent to grant easement deed to PG&E.
Second.
All right, motion Ms. Mayo, second Ms. Cowan. Ms. Cowan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move to 18.14. Our fine folks over at the Budget Advisory Committee. So we are looking to nominate 2 members to the Budget Advisory Committee. And so we have a appointee. Ms. Cowan, did you want to speak to yours?
Sure. So I'm recommending appointment of James Hall to the Budget Advisory Committee. He is a parent at Holbrook and brings a depth of experience in finances and executive leadership to the role as well from his career.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I don't know, Dr. Gonzalez or anyone else to speak to Walker Dearth. Otherwise, I would just thank Walker for volunteering. And
the way that it works with the budget advisory is that each one of our bargaining groups is able to nominate someone, and there's a change there, and so they're bringing forward a new name to be approved.
Okay, so thank you for that. And so do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the nomination of 2 new members to the Budget Advisory Committee for the 2020-21 school year.
I'll second.
Okay, and those nominees would be James Hall and Walker Dearth. And
Question. Question.
Yes, Ms. Mayo.
Are these individuals only appointed for 1 year? I believe the appointment is longer than 1 year.
I thought it was a 2-year, but.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Dr. Gonzalez?
And I'm asking staff right now, and we're not clear on that. I didn't think it was a 1-year appointment either, though.
I'll amend my motion to say beginning with the 2021 school year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Are we all comfortable with that?
Yes.
Great. Ms. Durkee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We thank them for their service. We now move to item 18.15. Review and potential approval of purchase 600 T-Mobile hotspots. Dr. Gonzalez, over to you.
Thank you. So the California Department of Education, in conjunction with the Public Utilities Commission, worked with a number of different organizations in the state. And in the process of that, Google stepped up and they were covering the cost of 120,000, I believe, hotspots for school districts. So when we responded to our survey, we said that we had a need for hotspots. We were offered 1,200 hotspots, but the challenge with this is that we have to pay for them as soon as they arrive. And we did not feel by putting out the survey that we had, by talking with our staff that works with homeless and foster youth, working with our special education staff and others, that we had a need for anything more than approximately 600. As a matter of fact, we're coming up with a need of approximately 450 to 500, but we wanted to make sure, based on the conversation and the concerns that many of you raised at the last board meeting, that if all of our surveys are going out via email and people aren't able to see those emails, that they may not be able to access and provide accurate information. So at this point in time, we are recommending approval for 600 hotspots. The way that it works is that the hotspots themselves are free. The service plan on them is not free. And we would be receiving 3 months free on a 12-month contract.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Gonzalez. Do we have questions?
I have one, possibly more. Will the hotspots only be available to foster youth and homeless youth and or just students in the Title I schools, because these are federal dollars?
Correct. They're federal dollars that come with no strings attached. So we are able to use it for any students in the district. We're planning on targeting those that responded to our surveys who said that they did not have reliable internet. We're going to be focusing on the priority students of foster youth and homeless students. And then from there, we would be taking a look at others who have a demonstrated need until we have no more hotspots.
Okay. And what is the approximate, so to speak, lifespan of each one of these units?
They usually last about 2 to 2.5 years.
Okay. And they will be added to our inventory. It'll probably cost more for the inventory than it is for the...
If we inventory them, no. If someone else inventories them, yes. That's part of what that contract analyst position is going to be taking care of.
So if we get to a point where we find out that actually we need 1,000 hotspots or something like that happens, do we have any options or through this method, or are those other hotspots already out at other school districts and we're capped?
They will be
at 600
districts, but what we are expecting to happen is I'm already hearing from other providers that in the future their rates will be dropped. As a matter of fact, I know that we've been talking a lot with both Verizon and with AT&T, and they're expecting rate drops in the future as well. So we would be exploring those options at that time when we can identify a funding source and we can identify a substantial need.
Okay. And then you said we need to pay for it as soon as they come in. So if we pass this tonight, what are they thinking the timeline is? Would it come over the summer, or would they not come in until August? Would they come next week?
They would not come in next week. There are a number of different forms that we need to sign. We need to process a purchase order, and then we need to move it forward. And then what they've got to do is they've got to go in and they've got to put all these screening processes or the filters on them, if you will, and then they have to inventory them all, and then they've got to send them to us, and then we've got to do the same. So at this point in time, we're really looking at probably July, if not late July, but definitely by the beginning of the school year, so that if and when we move to whatever method of instruction we're going to be moving to in the fall, we will have them ready.
So then will we have the principals at this point be identifying who the highest need is at their school, beyond, just which students responded to the survey? But I think there's a sense at each school of how many students may really need this the most. Either they're undocumented, unbanked, or unhoused, right? Those are kind of the top three. So is there a process by which, they will be kind of prioritizing the need at their school?
I think what we're going to do is we're going to look at who arrives at the beginning of the school year. And then if and when we need to go to a distance learning environment, we will already be collecting that data. So at this point in time, there has been nothing established that says this is going to be our first priority, this is going to be our second, this is going to be our third. We want to make sure that we can at least get them en route before we start looking at what our needs would be for next year.
So for the summer, the people that are in the summer program, if that was still going on when these arrived, would we send them out to students if we were able to?
Absolutely. And the ones that we already had in-house, we've already established the process, and those are already either being distributed or have already been distributed.
And
Those
that
were
was
our initial first purchase.
Which was how many again?
I think it was about, by the time we dealt with a couple internally, I think it was about 18. Yeah, it took us roughly 2.5 months to get 18 of them. We're hoping this is going to be faster.
So after the first year, we get 9 months for free, and it's costing $114,000 for, I'm sorry, we get 3 months for
3 months for free, yeah.
It's costing $114,000 for 9 months. Are we able to skip 3 months of payments if they aren't being used next summer and then start it up again?
We can explore, yes, we can explore that, yes. That's pretty much the way that we would need to do it, because, yeah, that's been my conversation with T-Mobile.
Okay. It'll be challenging because they don't want to shut it off and then turn it back on. But anyway, we'll see.
So I just want to try and help. So I think to Ms. Cown's point is this concern about the families or children that need this, but we're not in touch with them because so we don't know that, they don't know it, whatever. But I have a sense that principals and teachers know who's not showing up, and I think that's the point of every time we can get another slew of hotspots, what kind of pieces are in place to do some more aggressive outreach, and again, I think your teachers, the principals probably could figure that out pretty easily. And so, it's not just, hey, we got hotspots, come get one. It's like really, clearly trying to use this methodology to really reach those who, probably we're losing them, because they're just got so many barriers and trying to figure out how to come get a hotspot, or if I even need a hotspot, or what am I going to do with the hotspot, understanding what's free, all that kind of stuff. I think it's going to, but again, the task force folks, you got so many people on these task force, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of creative ideas, that come out. So I think we're just trying to say that needs to be a priority, is reaching those students.
Understood.
Okay. And do we have a motion on this?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the purchase of 600 T-Mobile hotspots.
Okay. And do I
I'll
have
second.
a second? All right. Great. Thank you. Ms. Durkee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. And the time has just flown by, and we are here at our very last item, which is the authorization for Jennifer Sachs, Executive Director, Instructional Support, and Dr. Wendy Aguili, Executive Director of Special Education, each to act as designated signers for the district in the absence of the superintendent. So I would
Mr. President, I move the approval of authorization of Jennifer Sachs, Executive Director, Instructional Support, and Dr. Wendy Aguili, Executive Director of Special Education, each to be designated as signers for the district in the absence of the superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Durkee. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayo. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
All right. I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. I want to say a giant thank you to Ms. Sachs and Dr. Aguili for continuing to take on even more, and the wonderful job that they've been doing, and we appreciate it very much. With that, are there any other future agenda items that anyone would like to bring up? All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
And the
Stay
same
safe.
day we started.
Same day we started.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Getting better.
Yeah, go wild for the rest of Monday night. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.